sentence in the scenario you're describing?
Your Honor, there is one case out of Georgia that actually Ms. Flanagan cited. I believe it was State v. Bradshaw, and where specifically that was a life recidivist where somebody was sent to prison for life based on a failure to register, and their prior offense was a statutory rape. It wasn't a forced crime.
But that was a recidivist context.
Yes, Your Honor.
Has this court ever, and maybe because we haven't, maybe we should, but have we ever addressed whether the same proportionality standards that apply in recidivist sentences should or can be applied in this sexual offender notification registration statute?
Your Honor, I don't believe I've ever seen a case from this court that specifically applies that in the same way, other than the failure to register itself is typically not going to be used as a recidivist action to give somebody a life sentence.
So we followed Georgia.
I'm sorry.
We have effectively followed that Georgia case, which says, you know, we're not going to put somebody in prison for life on a recidivist on a failure to register, but we're at the next step down. You know, is it constitutionally permissible for us to approve effectively a 10, 25-year sentence on a second offense whenever apparently this individual has had at least 3 opportunities to recognize he needs to follow the law?
Yes, Your Honor. I would say that we're basically on the same plane as the Georgia case is right now.
The legislature could fix this, at least if it was felt as a public policy that a fix was needed. This can be addressed by the legislature, could it not?
Yes, Your Honor. I believe for the most part it could be addressed by the legislature, but then again, Your Honor, I would also argue, based on the proportionality clause in our state constitution, I do think it's incumbent upon this court to curb the legislature if they're taking extreme action on a case where, if, you know,
so we have plenty of case law here that says we're not, you know, the legislature is vested with the authority to set forth the penalty, and obviously we have said in a recidivist situation that there is a bridge too far, but in this type of situation on a determinate sentence, we've never gone there, have we?
No, Your Honor, we have never gone there to my knowledge, and at least in the entire survey of cases that I've seen. Now, I know there's been times when this court has looked at cases and basically said, you know, a lifetime without parole punishment for not paying for a parking meter, you know, that would obviously cross the line. Even on a determinate sentence, let's say if it was a third offense of jaywalking that carried a year in prison, I imagine, you know, the court would have something to say on that matter. I don't want to be presumptuous there, but to say that, you know, the court's just going to immediately step away from any cases and not review them if there is a maximum cap somewhere in the law, Your Honor, I would disagree with that. I think that would open the door for, say, the robbery statute in our state. If the legislature were to amend that and put a 500-year cap on it, it would still serve the same effective life sentence for anybody who was convicted under it, but then this court would never be able to review, you know, even a simple robbery case where, you know, it's clear that the punishment shocks the conscience, as the Cooper case would say.
All right.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Any other questions?
Thank you.
From the respondent.
Thank you.
Good morning, Mr. Chief Justice, and may it please the Court. Thomas Lampman, Assistant Solicitor General on behalf of the State of West Virginia. Your Honors, as was noted during opposing counsel,
persons not having privileges of the floor will please vacate the chamber at this time, and all members and guests in the galleries will please rise as we are led in prayer this morning by Pastor Jamie Maddox.
Let's pray together. Dear Heavenly Father, we thank you for the day that you have given us. Lord, we thank you for the gift of life, and we're so reminded that life is so very short. Lord, it appeared for a little time, then it vanisheth away. We thank you for Jesus, who died for our sins and paid our sin debt so that we could go to heaven and rose again that third day. And Lord, we thank you for that he's given us the opportunity to have everlasting life. Lord, we thank you for all of our government leaders and our state leaders today. We pray that you'll bless them. We pray that you'll give them the wisdom they need today. And we thank you for their service to our great state of West Virginia. And we pray all these things in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen. All members and guests will please remain standing as we are led in the Pledge of Allegiance this morning by the gentleman, the 27th, Delegate Porterfield.
Please join me in the pledge to our flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Members and guests may be seated. Reading of the Journal.
Journal of the House of Delegates, Charleston, Monday, January 27th, 2020.
The gentleman, the 18th, Delegate Worrell.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I ask unanimous consent that the further reading of the journal be dispensed with and that it be approved and as having been read.
The gentleman, the 18th, asks unanimous consent that the further reading of the journal be dispensed with and it be approved as having been read. Are there objections? The chair hears no objections. Further reading of the journal is dispensed with. Lady in the 49th for an update on the calendar.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. For an update on the calendar, the committee substitute for House Bill 4094 is moving from the House calendar, second reading, to the special calendar.
Introduction of guests. Introduction of guests. The gentleman, the 63rd, Delegate Hardy.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Coming to us all the way down from Berkeley County in the West Gallery is Leadership Berkeley. If we could stand and give them a round of applause for traveling all the way down here.
The gentleman, the 27th, Delegate Ellington.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. On behalf of all the Mercer County delegates, Dr. Kendra Bogus from Concord University, along with a number of her staff, are here today. If they would rise and be recognized in the House, make them feel welcome.
The gentleman, the 6th, Delegate Kelly.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'd like to draw the House's attention to the North Gallery. I'd like to introduce some students from Tyler County Middle School. Sydney Deaton, Malachi Shepard, Braden Wall, Kaylee Hott, and their teacher, my good friend, Mr. Ed Underwood. Would you please make them feel welcome?
The gentleman, the 28th, Delegate Cooper.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Up in the North Gallery today, we have visiting from up in Summers County, one of the county commissioners, Jack David Woodrum, and I might add, he's also thrown his name in the ring for state senate, so please make him welcome.
The gentleman, the 48th, Delegate Queen.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Today we have over 30 people here from Harrison County for Youth and Government. 8th graders from Bridgeport Middle School, Mountaineer Middle School, Lincoln Middle School, South Harrison Middle School, WI Middle School, and Notre Dame Middle School. If they're in the gallery today, if they would please stand with their teachers in the House, please make them feel welcome.
The gentleman, the 7th, Delegate Barnhart.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Joining us today in the North Gallery for Youth and Government Day, we have from Pleasants County Middle School, Jayla Davis, Emma Brose, Cole Thomas, Mia Schofield, and they are escorted here today by their teacher, Miss Shaylin Delancey, an old friend of mine, and I'd ask that the House make them feel welcome and ask that they stand. Thank you.
The gentleman, the 39th, Delegate Bartlett.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. As I mentioned yesterday, we are honored to have a group of pastors with us in the Capitol today. Many of them are in our West Gallery. Some are observing the Senate session today. Along with many West Virginia pastors, we've also been blessed to receive today Pastor Michael Creed from Clinton, Maryland. Also his assistants, Andrew Friedenstein, Joe Kirby, and pastoring on a church on Pennsylvania Avenue in D.C., a brand new church, is Pastor Brad Wells. These men are in the West Gallery. If they would stand and be recognized, please, and would the members make them feel welcome?
The gentleman in the 46th, Douglas Martin.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Today in the North Gallery, we have some students from Lewis County Robert L. Bland Middle School. If they would please stand as I say their name: Jacob Johnson, Tanner Griffith, Catalina Tomey, and their teacher, Alexis Fisher. If everybody would please make them feel welcome.
The gentleman in the 14th, Douglas Butler.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Joining us today in the West Gallery, as Delegate Bartlett had mentioned, we have several pastors, and I thought it would be important to recognize several of them by name, considering that they represent a lot of constituents in all of our districts. These are pastors, youth pastors, assistants, and deacons. We have, and as these gentlemen would please stand as I call their names: Gary Hall, Jonathan Pinson, Josh Fletcher, Roger Pauley, Brad Wells, Seth Greenlee, Jason Perlack, Curtis Ferguson, Josh Gerwitz, Tim Hotzclaw, Jeremiah Dons, Brian Dons, Stephen Roop, Mike Bell, Gary Hall, Curtis King, Tommy Bartlett, Michael Spurlock, Jeff Reed, and Mike Roach. If the House would please welcome all these gentlemen, please.
The gentleman in the 23rd, Delegate Miller.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. We have several pages here today representing Sherman Junior High that I would like to recognize. We have Sarah Beth Farrell, Brody Carpenter, Jillian Toney, Jaden Gerald, Peyton Barker, and Annabeth Keith, and they are escorted today in the West Gallery by Janice Hutchinson, Mark and Christy Farrell, and their counselor at Sherman Junior High, Jennifer Gerald. If they would all please rise and the House make them feel welcome.
The gentleman in the 12th, Douglas Westfall.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. We have some pages here today with us from Ripley High School. They're all juniors. I think they're running around here somewhere, but Julia Roush, Audrey Huffman, Emma Jenkins, Lanny Scholas, and Christina Heinzman. The House, please make them feel welcome.
The gentleman in the 20th, Douglas Brown.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. In the South Gallery today, we have visiting with us the state Class A West Virginia State cheerleading champions from Tug Valley High School, located in Mingo County. I'd like to tell you just a little bit about the program real briefly. This makes the third consecutive championship they've won in a row in this division. They've won 7 championships in the last 15 years, 4 runners-up in that period. They're coached by Tara Wolford, who was named the WVSSAC Coach of the Year for all divisions, and she was also named the National Federation Mid-Atlantic Division, which is essentially all the East Coast Coach of the Year. I'd ask this House to stand up and give them a round of applause for their hard efforts and welcome them to Charleston.
The gentleman in the 43rd, Douglas Hartman.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. We have some pages here on behalf of Delegate Thompson and me from Tigers Valley Middle School. We have Reagan Kyle, and from Elkins Middle School, Leanna Shrum. And then the West Gallery have their parents, Jonathan, Angela, Kyle. If they would stand and the House make them welcome.
The lady in the 42nd, Douglas Lavender-Bowe.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. On behalf of myself and Delegate Campbell, I'd like to welcome our friend and Greenbrier County Commissioner, Tammy Shiflett Tincher. She's in the South Gallery. If you would please rise and the House make her feel welcome.
The gentleman at 27th, Dr. Porterfield.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And the West Gallery today is led us in prayer as pastor for the Rich Creek Baptist Church, my home pastor, James Maddox. Would the House please make him welcome, and I would ask him to please stand. Thank you.
The gentleman at 51st, Dr. Hanson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I have a number of people to introduce. First, in the South Gallery, representing Citizens Climate Lobby from Monongalia, Lincoln, Kanawha, and Boone County. If you could stand when I announce your name: Sandra Fallon, Jim Probst, Jill Watkins, Michael Witten, and Georgia Nealon. And then also in the South Gallery from the West Virginia Center on Climate Change is Logan Thorne and Kate Leary. And finally, in the North Gallery from Friends of the Cheat, we have Beth Warnick, Madison Ball, and last but not least, the winner of the National River Hero Award, the Executive Director of Friends of the Cheat, Amanda Pitzer. If the House could please make them welcome.
Palladium at 65th, Dr. Brown.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. It's not every day that I get to welcome folks from my hometown and home county. So Jefferson County is here big time in the South Gallery. I do have a few folks to introduce. We are celebrating in the People's House E-Day, where we lift up environmental consciousness, environmental sustainability, and of course, environmental justice. And your work for that effort is unparalleled. I'd like to recognize the groups. We have Eastern Panhandle Green Coalition, Eastern Panhandle Sierra Club, Jefferson County Foundation, and then Jefferson County Vision. Now, the members that I list here, could you please stand up and allow the House to welcome you properly? I have Gail and Alan Colhorst, Grant Perliman, Regina Hendricks, Catherine Joswick, Molly Langland, Mary Reed, Ruth Hatcher, Stacy Tabb, Laurel Parker, Eileen Kerfman, Maggie Loudon, Chrissy Weimer, Susan Brookerson, and then Lynn Dells. Also, I want to thank Karen Ireland, Kayla Young, and Angie Rosser for all of your hospitality while our folks from home made it out here to the People's Capital. So please stand and let the House properly make you feel welcome.
The gentleman at 36, Dr. Robinson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Today in the North Gallery, we have students from Capitol High School from Miss Kerner's civics class. They'll be going around the Capitol and trying to lobby on different bills. So if you can take the time out of your day to talk to them and let them try to push you one way or the other on the bill, that'd be great. If the House will make them feel welcome. Thank you.
The gentleman at 67th, Dr. Doyle.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I have a couple of more people I'd like to introduce from Jefferson County. The county that makes the song "Take Me Home, Country Roads" geographically accurate. And 300 miles away from here, but a whole bunch of them came today, folks. I would like to introduce Emily Vaughn and Tracy Danzy. Now, Emily Vaughn and Tracy Danzy, a couple of months ago, walked all across the entire nation of Denmark to protest pollution that a Danish company wishes to bring to our county. Those of you who can see will see that Tracy Danzy has only one leg. She lost a leg and part of her hip due to cancer, yet she still walked the entire width of Denmark on one leg and two crutches. Let us applaud their courage and welcome them.
Are there further introductions? Reports of standing committees.
Your Committee on Education has had under consideration House Bill 2464, requiring free feminine hygiene products in grades 6 through 12. Reports the same back with amendment with recommendation that it do pass, that it be referred to Committee on Finance.
The report will be received. The bill will be referred to the Committee on Finance.
Committee on Judiciary has had under consideration House Bill 4470, relating to persons 18 years of age or older in the custody of the Bureau of Juvenile Services. Reports back to Committee Substitute, therefore, with recommendation that the Committee Substitute do pass.
The report will be received.
Your Committee on Banking and Insurance has had under consideration House Bill 4359, increasing the filing fees for insurers. Reports the same back with recommendation that it do pass.
The report will be received.
Your Committee on Banking and Insurance has had under consideration House Bill 4466, Certificates of Insurance Act, House Bill 4477, West Virginia Mutual to Mutual Insurance Holding Company Act, and House Bill 4502 relating to insurance adjusters. Reports the same back with recommendation that each do pass, that they be referred to Committee on Judiciary.
The report will be received. All bills will be referred to the Committee on Judiciary.
Your Committee on Government Organization has had under consideration House Bill 2338, allowing the owner of an antique military vehicle to display alternative registration insignia. Reports back Committee Substitute, therefore, with the recommendation that the Committee Substitute do pass.
The report will be received.
Your Committee on Government Organization has had under consideration House Bill 4179, recognition of emergency medical services personnel licensure interstate compact. Reports the same back with recommendation that it do pass.
The report will be received.
Your Committee on Agriculture and Natural Resources has had under consideration House Bill 4263, Commissioner of Agriculture Hemp Products. Reports the same back with recommendation that it do pass, that it be referred to Committee on Judiciary.
The report will be received. The bill will be referred to the Committee on Judiciary.
Your Committee on Agriculture and Natural Resources has had under consideration House Bill 2149 relating to the Farm to Food Bank Tax Credit, and House Bill 4407 exempting from the sales tax all-terrain vehicles and utility terrain vehicles used as farm equipment. Reports the same back with amendment with recommendation that each do pass as amended, that they be referred to Committee on Finance.
The report will be received. Both bills will be referred to the Committee on Finance.
Your Committee on Agriculture and Natural Resources has had under consideration House Bill 2663, exempting buildings or structures utilized exclusively for agricultural purposes from the provisions of the State Building Code. Reports the same back with recommendation that it do pass, that it be referred to Committee on Government Organization.
The report will be received. The bill will be referred to the Committee on Government Organization.
Your Committee on Agriculture and Natural Resources has had under consideration House Bill 4381 relating to lifetime hunting, fishing, and trapping licenses for adopted children. Reports the same back with recommendation that it do pass.
The report will be received.
Your Committee on Agriculture and Natural Resources has had under consideration House Bill 4456, allowing a member of a volunteer fire department to purchase a resident lifetime hunting, fishing, and trapping license. Reports the same back with recommendation that it do pass, that it be referred to Committee on Finance.
The report will be received. The bill will be referred to the Committee on Finance. Are there further reports of standing committees? If not, reports of select committees. Messages from the Executive. Messages from the Senate.
The Clerk of the Senate announces the passage by the Senate of Senate Bill 8, exempting certain armed forces veterans from payment of fees to carry deadly weapon.
The message will be received. The bill will be referred to the Committee on Veterans Affairs and Homeland Security, then the Committee on Finance.
The Senate has passed Senate Bill 114, providing continued eligibility for developmental disability services to dependents of military members.
The message will be received. The bill will be referred to the Committee on Veterans Affairs and Homeland Security, then the Committee on Finance.
The Senate has passed Senate Bill 289, creating Green Alert Plan.
The message will be received. The bill will be referred to the Committee on Veterans Affairs and Homeland Security, then the Committee on Finance.
The Senate has passed Committee Substitute for Senate Bill 303, enacting Students' Rights to Know Act.
The message will be received. The bill will be referred to the Committee on Education.
Senate has passed. Committee substitute for Senate Bill 357, authorizing Department of Revenue to promulgate legislative rules.
Message will be received. The bill will be referred to the Committee on Judiciary.
The Senate has passed. Committee substitute for Senate Bill 364, authorizing Department of Transportation to promulgate legislative rules.
Message will be received. The bill will be referred to the Committee on Judiciary.
The Senate has passed. Senate Bill 468, relating to eligibility for license or permit application.
Message will be received. The bill will be referred to the Committee on Agriculture and Natural Resources.
The Senate has passed. Committee substitute for Senate Bill 470, relating to the use of crossbow to hunt.
The message will be received. The bill will be referred to the Committee on Agriculture and Natural Resources.
The Senate has passed. Committee substitute for Senate Bill 487, providing an exception that all DNR payments be deposited within 24 hours.
The message will be received. The bill will be referred to the Committee on Agriculture and Natural Resources.
The Senate has passed. Committee substitute for Senate Bill 500, relating to Class Y special crossbow hunting permit.
The message will be received. The bill will be referred to the Committee on Agriculture and Natural Resources.
The Senate has passed. Committee substitute for Senate Bill 501, adding protection operation of North Bend Rail Trail, Greenbrier River Trail, and Elk River Trail to Parks and Recreation section of DNR.
The message will be received. The bill will be referred to the Committee on Agriculture and Natural Resources.
The Senate has passed Senate Bill 509, relating to custodial allocation actions independent of divorce.
The message will be received. The bill will be referred to the Committee on Judiciary. Are there further messages from the Senate? If not, resolutions.
House Resolution 8, supporting the signing of a bilateral trade agreement between the United States and the Republic of China, Taiwan.
Lady in the 49th.
Mr. Speaker, I ask unanimous consent that the further reading of resolutions introduced be dispensed with, and that each resolution be considered as formally introduced and referred to the appropriate committees as indicated on the chamber automation system.
The lady in the 49th asked unanimous consent that further reading of resolutions introduced be dispensed with, and that each resolution be considered as having been formally introduced and referred to the appropriate committees as shown on the chamber automation system. Are there objections? The chair hears no objections. Petitions.
Delegate Pushkin presents a petition from individuals urging delegates to keep drinking water safe and reject House Bill 4079, altering the definition of an above-ground storage tank.
The petition will be received and be referred to the Committee on Energy. Motions. Bills introduced.
House Bill 4556, authorizing the Commissioner of the Division of Corrections and Rehabilitation to approve plans for inmates.
Lady in the 49th.
Mr. Speaker, I ask unanimous consent that the further reading of bills introduced be dispensed with, and that each bill be considered as formally introduced and referred to the appropriate committees as indicated on the chamber automation system.
The lady in the 49th asked unanimous consent that further reading of bills introduced be dispensed with, and that each bill be considered as having been formally introduced and referred to the appropriate committees as shown on the chamber automation system. Are there objections? The chair hears no objections. Unfinished business. Bills on third reading.
Committee substitute for House Bill 2497, relating to the whistleblower law.
Are there objections to having the bill explained in lieu of having it read? For what purpose does the gentleman of the 43rd, Douglas Thompson, seek recognition?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I ask for unanimous consent to be added as a co-sponsor to this bill.
The gentleman of the 43rd asked unanimous consent to be added as a co-sponsor to Committee substitute for House Bill 2497. Are there objections? The chair hears no objection. The gentleman's name shall be added. Are there objections to having the bill explained in lieu of having it read? Chair hears no objection. The gentleman of the 35th, Douglas Capito, to explain the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and good morning, everybody. We're dealing with a subject that may have been foreign to some of us within the last 12 months, but I believe to be foreign no more. We're dealing with whistleblower protections. I think we all know about whistleblowers by now, but these deal with whistleblowers that are covered by our civil service system, under our civil service system here in West Virginia. And what is, in essence this bill does, it enumerates certain protections to those individuals that are classified as whistleblowers. So specifically what the bill does, it provides another protection for whistleblowers, that they in essence cannot be passed up for a promotion or for a raise simply based on their categorization of a whistleblower. I might add that the whistleblower must have otherwise been entitled to that raise. So there can't be other factors that would have denied that individual that raise or promotion but for being a whistleblower. Second, it provides a secondary remedy for those individuals to bring that grievance before the West Virginia Public Employees Grievance, or through the West Virginia Public Employees Grievance procedure. And thirdly, it deals with political activities and provides that no employees covered under the civil service system may be prohibited from engaging in political activity or be denied the right to refrain from engaging in political activity. And further, that no employee covered by the system may be denied the right to be a member of an organization of employees or to refrain from being a member of employees. Mr. Speaker, I urge passage of the bill.
The question before the House is, shall the bill pass? Are the members who wish to speak to the passage of the bill? If not, those in favor of passage will vote aye. Those opposed will vote no. The clerk will prepare the machine. Has every member voted? If so, the clerk will close the machine and ascertain the result on this question. There are 89 ayes, 6 nays, and 5 members absent not voting. A majority of members having voted in the affirmative, the chair declares the bill passed. The clerk will please report the title.
Committee substitute for House Bill 2497.
Are there amendments to the title? If not, the title is read by the clerk will be and remain the title of the bill. The clerk will please communicate the acts of the House to the Senate and request concurrence therein. Next bill on third reading.
House Bill 4089, requiring cursive writing to be taught.
Are there objections to having the bill explained in lieu of having it read? The chair hears no objection. For what purpose of the gentleman to 32nd delegate Fast seek recognition?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I ask unanimous consent to be added as a co-sponsor of this bill, and I apologize for my tardiness.
Are there objections? The chair hears no objections. The gentleman's name shall be added. For what purpose of the gentleman to 16th delegate Lennon will seek recognition?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I ask unanimous consent for the same.
Are there objections? The chair hears no objections. The gentleman to 19th delegate Hicks.
Same request, Your Honor, be added as a sponsor.
Chair
to
would
the
ask the
bill.
clerk how many spots are available on this bill. Okay, gentleman of the 19th. Gentleman of the 19th's request, are there objections? Chair hears no objections. Gentleman's request is granted. Are there objections to having the bill explained in lieu of having it read? Chair hears none. Gentleman of the 27th, delegate Ellington, to explain the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And if you may give me a little latitude, I have 2 points I'd like to make before I lead into the bill. First part, despite my profession, I have penmanship that can be extremely neat, so I'll just point that out to you. Second part, the Committee on Education has received a number of bills referencing different topics, curriculum that they wanted to add in. We've had things on personal finance, economics, metrics, our American history as far as our documents. All of these things have been in. The concern is all of these are in the state code already. And the same with this particular bill. The concern is that things aren't being taught properly. Now, some of our students are getting taught, they're learning this. Some of our great teachers are doing a very good job with this, but apparently some are falling through the cracks. These things seem to keep coming up, and that's the concern. Now, we don't have much oversight on what goes on. If the school board is not going to have accountability, this legislative body does not have any real oversight other than withholding funding, or by mentioning that we tell them, do this, we want you to keep doing this, by reminding them even though it's in code. Now, many of these students have done very well, but we do have even individuals here in this chamber that probably don't know cursive. And some don't even know how to read the face of a clock, which is kind of concerning. Now, I will tell you, many of those same individuals could probably kick my butt on this cell phone, figuring out all the things to do. But the thing is, we have to get back to basics, and that's pretty much what this bill is saying. So there are different things. So this bill pretty much states that for grades 3 to 5, that cursive will be taught in all the schools. Now, current code in 2510 reports that in policy that from grades 2 to 4, it's already in place. So in grade 2, if it's developmentally acceptable, they could start that, goes through grade 4. This just expands it to grade 5, so it doesn't get rid of grade 2, but goes to grade 5. Now, the sponsor of the bill wanted this to be named the Gertrude Martin Act in appreciation of his previous third grade teacher. If you want to ask him any additional information about his teacher, you can find that out. But that's what this bill does. So, Mr. Speaker, in order to prompt our Board of Education to get the job done, I recommend that we pass this bill.
The question before the House is, shall the bill pass? The gentleman of 66, Delegate Espinosa.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Will the chairman yield? Will the chairman yield?
Yes.
Chairman does
Yes,
yield.
sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Appreciate you yielding. I believe I might have been in finance when this bill was considered in education, so apologize for not reaching out to you sooner. Can you tell me, in committee, was there testimony from any of the school districts regarding the impact of this legislation, or educators as far as an additional mandate on their time, what impact this might have?
In the committee, that did not come up. It was just reported that it was already supposed to be done, and adding it to 5th grade might be an impact. I will say, out of committee, all the teachers I've talked to, 100% were in favor of doing this. So I don't think you'll get any resistance there. But apparently over the past several years, they weren't teaching it in certain classes. So I don't know if there wasn't any fiscal note, and there wasn't anything as far as how many are not getting taught, how many are getting taught.
So to be clear, the current requirement, which I understand you said was from 2 to 4.
2 to 4,
Is
correct.
that in code, or is that in policy?
That is in the code, and that's policy 2510.
Okay. All right. So really the effect of this legislation is extended to 5th grade. It's already in code for 2nd
Right,
and 4th.
2 and 4 will still stay there. This will just kind of add 5th grade, but it's pretty much prompting them. Needs to be done.
All right. Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The gentleman, the 10th, Kelly.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. It's unfortunate, but we have a small group of students within the state of West Virginia who were not taught to handwrite in cursive. I have a granddaughter who's a freshman in high school this year. She has no idea how to write in cursive, yet she's a 4.0 student. When we sit back and look and think, these young gentlemen and ladies who were in that small group of people that were not taught cursive, they can't read the Constitution of the United States. They can't read the Declaration of Independence. They're all written in cursive. And how many other documents that we have, both at the national level, state level. We have deeds recorded in our courthouses that are written in cursive. And it's a shame that this small group of people were penalized because they were not given the opportunity to learn how to write in cursive. Mr. Speaker, this is an important bill. It's a bill that we talk about increasing education and helping our students get a better education. This is a bill that'll do that, and I strongly support the passage of this bill. Thank you.
Does the gentleman, the 27th, wish to close debate on the bill? If not, the question before the House is, shall the bill pass? Those in favor will vote aye. Those opposed will vote no. The clerk will prepare the machine. Has every member voted? If so, the clerk will close the machine and ascertain the result. On this question, there are 87 ayes, 8 nays, 5 members absent not voting. A majority of members having voted in the affirmative, the chair declares the bill passed. The clerk will please report the title.
House Bill 4089.
Are there amendments to the title? If not, the title is read by the clerk will be and remain the title of the bill. The clerk will please communicate the acts of the House to the Senate and request concurrence therein. Next bill on 3rd reading.
House Bill 4365, granting of college credit hours for learning English as a second language.
For what purpose does the gentleman, the 27th, Doug Porterfield, seek recognition?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I ask unanimous consent to be added to the sponsorship of the bill.
Of House Bill 4365?
Yes.
Are there objections? Chair hears no objections. Are there objections to having House Bill 4365 explained in lieu of having it read? Chair hears no objection. The gentleman from the 27th, Doug Ellington, to explain the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The purpose of this bill is to authorize state institutions of higher learning to grant college credit to students who have learned English as a second language. Mr. Speaker, it also adds that HEPC and the community technical colleges do propose rules. Mr. Speaker, I urge passage.
The question before the House is, shall the bill pass? The gentleman, the 60th, Doug Wilson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Request a ruling under Rule 49. 2 of my kids will be learning English as a second language.
Would be learning English as a second language?
Yes, sir.
The gentleman would be part of a class of much greater than 5 and therefore would be directed to vote. Are there other members who wish to speak to the passage of the bill? If not, then the question before the House is, shall the bill pass? Those in favor will vote aye. Those opposed will vote no. The clerk will prepare the machine. Has every member voted? Lady in the 38th, Graves. The clerk will close the machine and ascertain the result. On this question, there are 95 ayes, 0 nays, 5 members absent, not voting. Majority of members having voted in the affirmative, the chair declares the bill passed. The clerk will please report the title.
House Bill 4365.
Are there amendments to the title?
Delegate Ellington moves to amend the title.
The question before the House is the adoption of the title amendment. Those in favor of the title amendment will say aye. Any opposed will say no. The ayes have it. Chair declares the title amendment adopted. The title as amended by the House will be and remain the title of the bill. The clerk will please communicate the action of the House to the Senate and request concurrence therein. Next bill on third reading.
House Bill 4480 relating to legislative rules for the Higher Education Policy Commission.
Are there objections to having the bill explained in lieu of having it read? Chair hears none. The gentleman the 27th, Delegate Ellington, to explain the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This is a rules bill that comes in several parts. I'll try to go over that briefly, but we'll be glad to answer any questions. The bill authorizes Higher Education Policy Commission and the Community and Technical College Council legislative rules that have been reviewed and recommended by the Legislative Oversight Committee on Education and Accountability, LOCEA. LOCEA recommended the following rules to be repealed. Series 49, which had to deal with HEPC accountability system, since we had passed Senate Bill 673 last year, that repeals the requirements that were in Series 49, and some of these are amended into Series 3 that follows. LOCEA recommended that the following rules also be authorized. In Series 3, which was HEPC Higher Education Accountability System, this includes Senate Bill 673, and it provides for additional flexibility in the reporting of institutional and system-level data by streaming requirements for published annual reports, and allowing the Commission staff to make data available to the public using internet-based tools and the agency's official websites. The rule addresses these changes and merges portions of the previous Series 49, retitling it as Series 3 Higher Education Accountability System. The next part is Series 26, HEPC, the Underwood-Smith, what used to be called the Teacher Scholarship is now named Teaching Scholars Program and Teacher Education Loan Repayment Program. This includes House Bill 206 that was passed last year, made significant changes to the Underwood-Smith Scholarship Program and renamed it the Underwood-Smith Teaching Scholars Program and Teacher Education Loan Repayment Program. This rule is revised to reflect the statutory changes. The proposed rule differs from the current rule in that it is designed to specifically address critical teacher shortage needs in the state. The teacher shortage areas will be clarified annually by the West Virginia Department of Education. The revised rule also provides for additional academic support and mentoring and increases the award from a $5,000 to $10,000 annual award. Upon graduation and teacher certification, recipients must fulfill their teaching obligation to teach in an identified critical teaching shortage field in an elementary, middle, or secondary public school in West Virginia for up to 5 years. Next part is Series 26, the rule, this is continued on that. The rule also includes the Education Loan Repayment Program. This revision is designed to assist teachers and school counselors with loan repayment if they are employed in a West Virginia public school as a teacher in the critical shortage teaching field or as a school counselor at the elementary, middle, or secondary level in a school or geographic area of the state identified as an area of need for the field. The loan recipient is eligible for renewal of a loan repayment assistance reward only during periods when the recipient complies with all other criteria and conditions established by the rule. The last part is Series 8, which is the Community and Technical Colleges West Virginia Invest Grant Program. This incorporates Senate Bill 1, which was passed last year, that created the Free Community College Program. The proposed rule also establishes guidelines and procedures to reflect the mandates of the bill. The rule sets eligibility requirements for institutions and students. It sets forth the last dollar in award process, requires prospective recipients to complete the FAFSA form. The rule also states that conditions for renewal of the award and the process for any post-award changes. It provides for monetary repayment if the student does not meet the after-graduation residency requirements, and the rule also establishes due diligence requirements for collection of increased or for collection of monetary repayment and sets forth an appeals process. Finally, the rule also provides accounting, reporting, and auditing requirements. Mr. Speaker, I urge passage of the rules bill.
The question before the House is, shall the bill pass? Are there members who wish to speak to the passage of the bill? If not, those in favor of passage will vote aye. Those opposed will vote no. The clerk will prepare the machine. Has every member voted? If so, the clerk will close the machine and ascertain the result on this question. There are 95 ayes, 0 nays, 5 members absent not voting, a majority of members having voted in the affirmative. The chair declares the bill passed. The clerk will please report the title.
House Bill 4480.
Are there amendments to the title? If not, the title is read by the clerk will be and remain the title of the bill. The clerk will please communicate the acts of the House to the Senate and request concurrence therein. Are there further bills on third reading? If not, bills on second reading.
Committee substitute for Senate Bill 323, authorizing Department of Administration to promulgate legislative rules.
Are there amendments? No. If not, the bill will be advanced.
Committee substitute for House Bill 2419, relating to the authorization to release a defendant or a person arrested upon his or her own recognizance.
Are there amendments?
Delegate CANESTRARO moves to amend the bill on page 2, section 1A, lines 19 through 21, following the word code on line 19 by inserting the word or and striking out lines 20 and 21 in their entirety and relettering subdivision E accordingly.
The question before the House is the adoption of the amendment as just read by the clerk. The gentleman from the 4th, Delegate CANESTRARO.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Just to give a quick representation of what the amendment does. This amendment was actually offered up in Judiciary Committee, and at that time I voted against this amendment. My amendment here would take out simple possession of a controlled substance as an offense in which somebody cannot automatically be PR'd, given a personal recognizance bond. Quite frankly, while I was in committee and I voted no on this, I did not realize that this was supported by several groups that I back. So I agreed that I would try to make the amendment on the floor and allow simple possession to be given personal recognizance bonds.
The gentleman 27th, Dr. Schott.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise in opposition to the gentleman's amendment. I think it's important to understand how the bill works, give you the context for the bill so you understand that the implication that anyone that is arrested for simple possession will be sent to jail, and that's not the case. This bill basically has two layers to it. The first layer is a bill that we passed twice before and sent to the Senate, which was not acted upon, and that is what I'll call a default provision to a personal recognizance bond in certain situations that are misdemeanors, okay? But there are exceptions, and among the exceptions is the one that the gentleman's amendment seeks to strike. The fact that that exception to the automatic personal recognizance bond is in there does not mean, and I want to make this clear, that a person that appears with that type of charge can't be released on a personal recognizance bond. It's a mandatory provision if you aren't included in that category, but it's permissive. And the key language in the rest of the bill, which is new this year, and I want to make that clear, is another layer which basically says to the magistrate or the judicial official who's considering this that you should use the least restrictive alternative when someone comes before you with any other criminal violation that could result in incarceration. In other words, the first layer of this is a mandatory personal recognizance bonds essentially for nonviolent minor misdemeanors. The second part of this basically says to the magistrate, you should follow the least restrictive alternative, and you can release on personal recognizance if you wish. It's just not mandatory, but you can also impose a number of different conditions. For instance, you could, and these are listed in the bill, you can release to a person who's going to take charge of this person. Let's suppose the person comes in and is intoxicated or in some state where it appears that it might be dangerous to release this person. You can insist the person participate in home incarceration, electronic monitoring. You can put a condition on there that they're to avoid any contact with the victim or other person, refrain from the excessive use of alcohol or controlled substances. There's a lot of latitude that this gives the magistrate, but with directions that he or she should use the least restrictive combination or at least restrictive condition or combination of restrictions. So a person that comes in with a charge of simple possession may be released on personal recognizance, but it's not mandatory. And why is that important? I think if you look at the act that it's referred to, and that this is the Uniform Controlled Substances Act, we're talking about misdemeanor charges. There's a variety of misdemeanor charges in this section, not just simple possession. There is a person who, with intent to manufacture, deliver, or possess with intent to manufacture, deliver a controlled substance, which is in Schedule 5. And if you go to Schedule 5, you will see that that includes a number of combination type substances that may include opium or codeine. Now that's the section of the code that deals with intent to either manufacture, deliver, or possess with intent to do that. There's also a section in there that if you possess a controlled substance, we're not talking now about a Schedule 5, but any controlled substance, heroin, opiates, whatever, without a prescription, that's also a misdemeanor. That's also a misdemeanor. So you could be charged with possession of heroin or any type of opiate. There's a number of, so any schedule is included. My suggestion here is that if a person comes in with a minor Schedule 5 possession charge or perhaps marijuana, the magistrate in all likelihood, following the direction in the second part of this bill, is likely to use the least restrictive alternative, which might be a personal recognizance bond, but he has the latitude not to do that. It's not mandatory. Otherwise, under these nonviolent, non-sexually related offenses, this is a mandatory personal recognizance, which is in there, obviously, for among several reasons, but the two most obvious are our regional jail bill problem that all of us are facing, but also with regard to the disparity in the way these bonds are basically assigned for various crimes. So, and here's the last thing I would say. We're embarking on this for a lot of reasons down this path, two of them I just mentioned, but we need to be cautious. We're doing things that we haven't done before. I think all of you have read about how aggressive the New York legislation was on this area, and there's been some criticism of that. It is an aggressive but cautious approach to our problem, and I would suggest that that section of the code, that section of the bill that we're leaving in there that the gentleman seeks to strike is important to retain the permissive nature of that rather than the mandatory personal recognizance because of this variety of different charges that can arise under the misdemeanor charges that can arise under the Uniform Controlled Substances Act. So for that reason, I would urge rejection of the gentleman's amendment.
The gentleman the third, Dr. Fluharty.
Yeah, okay. Who did that? Would the chair of judiciary, would the chair of judiciary yield?
Yes, I will.
Okay, I want to talk about these exceptions real quick so we're
Sure.
clear. Could you give us a rundown? It looks to me that most of these exceptions involve potential crimes against an individual.
Yes, these appear under subsection A, a misdemeanor offense of actual violence or threat of violence against a person. The second one of the exceptions is a misdemeanor offense where the victim was a minor. The third one, a misdemeanor offense involving the use of a deadly weapon. The fourth one is the one that's sought to be struck, a misdemeanor offense of the Uniform Controlled Substances Act. And the last one is a serious misdemeanor traffic offense, which is set forth in 17C51 and 17C5.2.
And those are accidents that likely involve...
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear you. What?
Those are accidents that likely involve bodily injury of another person, correct?
Yes.
Okay, so of these exceptions, you'd agree with me there's only one here that doesn't involve harming another person or involve violence or where there's an actual victim.
Well, I wouldn't go that far. I think many of these misdemeanor offenses in the Uniform Controlled Substances Act does it. The Schedule 5 substances could possibly, if they're being used with an intent to manufacture or deliver, could possibly involve the ultimate consumer of those items. So while I would agree that in most cases it doesn't involve, I wouldn't say in every case it could involve other people.
And good cause. So when I hear good cause, that has a legal definition, I believe, when I read it. So how this would work for you, would there need to be a good cause hearing to determine whether good cause does exist for these exceptions?
I'll tell you my interpretation of that phrase. I think we're distinguishing between crimes and the individual, okay? The crimes are laid out as the exception, but I think that except for good cause provision gives the magistrate to look at the person objectively and see, now is this person, for instance, are they capable of being released because of their physical condition? Let's suppose they are inebriated or under the control of some substance. Or perhaps the magistrate is told by the officer that brings the person to them that during the course of that transport, the person has threatened somebody else. I think this is person-specific, that the magistrate, based on the person that appears before him, it could be that the person has been before him a number of times for similar charges, all of which are misdemeanors.
Sure.
And rather than being forced to admit them on, or to put them on personal recognizance, they may choose a different alternative, some other conditions, home confinement, electronic monitoring, perhaps some conditions such as you can't use controlled substances. So I think the except for good cause language in there is basically person-specific based on the way that person appears to the magistrate and the information available to the magistrate about that person. That's the way I interpret it.
That's the way you interpret it. So
yes.
You don't believe that we'd have to have a separate hearing where evidence is put on?
No, I don't.
For good cause, but you're not quite sure though, right?
Well, I'm
Just
sure
reading
I
it
can't
that
be
way.
of anything else in this world today, yes.
Okay, that's all I have. Thank you. Very briefly, Mr. Speaker. I'd like to
Yes,
speak to
gentleman
the
recognized.
amendment.
Proceed.
I'm going to support the amendment. If you look at the list of exceptions and you read those and you go, which one doesn't belong here? It's the one that the gentleman's seeking to strike because there's no violence against anybody, there's no victim in this situation. The other examples here require the violence, a victim, a minor, something where you were obviously a threat to others. And he's seeking to strike this, which, if it's a simple possession charge, obviously you're not a threat to others. And it simply just does not belong with the exceptions. And as I'm trying to get through this, the exceptions require good cause to be shown, and it's unclear to me whether the good cause would require a separate hearing. If it requires a separate hearing, what could possibly happen is that person remains incarcerated until the hearing, which costs taxpayers dollars to hold people in. So I think it's a little blurred, it's not clear. If we strike this section, it would clarify the intent of the bill, which is to keep harmful people in, those who aren't harmful back on the streets, so we're not paying money to lock them up. So I would support the amendment. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The gentleman at 37, Dr. Pushkin.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Would the sponsor of the amendment please yield?
Sponsor does yield.
Thank you, sir. Now, in your day job, you're an assistant prosecutor in West Virginia?
Yes, sir.
In Marshall County?
Yes, sir.
How long have you been a prosecutor?
12 years.
For 12 years? Okay. Well, you mentioned, I'll go start with this. You mentioned that there are several groups who you generally feel are knowledgeable to criminal justice type bills, that they contacted you and said they support it. Would you care to let us know what groups those are?
It was the West Virginia Prosecuting Attorneys Association.
The Prosecuting Attorney Association would think that this amendment would make this a better bill?
Right.
Okay. And you're, how many years did you say? How many years have you been a prosecutor?
12 years.
And you're 12 years. Okay. I know it was stated that this mainly, when you're talking about misdemeanors in this act, you're talking about simple possession for the most part, correct? Unless, of course, what the Judiciary Chair stated was a possession with intent for a Schedule 5. Now, in your 12 years, have you ever seen anyone prosecuted for intent to deliver a Schedule 5?
Not intent to deliver. I've seen delivery of a Schedule 5, which is also a misdemeanor.
What is a schedule? Can you give me an example? I've never heard of a Schedule 5 being a street drug. So what would a Schedule 5 be?
The one that comes to mind, Delegate, is what is it, gabapentin?
Are you sure about that?
No,
I think gabapentin wasn't scheduled until recently. We passed that a couple years ago, and I believe it's for non-narcotic.
Okay,
which is
be
also
wrong.
Yeah.
I could look at the schedule if you want me to.
What's that?
I could look up the schedule.
No, that's okay. That's good to save everybody time. I just thought it was mainly, but what I'm getting at, the main effect of this amendment would be so people who were charged with a simple possession, that this bill would apply to them, this trying to more incentivize personal recognizance as so we don't have nonviolent pretrial misdemeanors waiting in our regional jail system, which we know is overcrowded. So that's what the intent of your amendment.
Right, that's the intent, and the way I look at it, the other crimes listed that are the exceptions, there's crimes against the person, things that may have a deadly weapon involved, serious traffic offenses like negligent homicide or DUI with injury. They all have the potential to harm somebody else. This one, the only thing that it has the potential to harm is the person that may use the substance.
Okay. Now, the way you read it says, in my opinion, correct me if I'm wrong, that line, except for good cause, that would give the magistrate, whoever's setting the bond, some discretion as to whether or not there could be like a pretrial diversion or home confinement. Say if somebody really needs help and they come before this judge, except for good cause would give them that discretion. Do you agree?
Right, but I don't read the bill the same way with the good cause shown part of it. I think that the bill reads, except for good cause shown, a magistrate shall release somebody on a PR bond unless they're charged with A, B, C, or D.
Okay.
So
but that
you have to show good cause to be able to set something other than a PR bond on everything except for those exceptions.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you for yielding. I appreciate your service to your county and this state, and you're providing us with the experience of a real prosecutor. Thank you. I'll briefly address the amendment.
Yes, gentleman's recognized.
Thank you. I strongly support the amendment. I think if what we're aiming to do here is to alleviate the overcrowding in our regional jail authority, which is a huge burden on our counties, then we have to add these nonviolent misdemeanors to the bill. And I really think it would only affect, for the most part, in reality, how things actually happen on the street. It's only going to be simple possession. You just don't hear people getting charged with intent to deliver a Schedule 5. Schedule 5 drugs aren't widely bought and sold or abused on the street, for that matter. I believe that the drug that was mentioned, gabapentin, which is actually the drug in Neurontin, that's even above a Schedule 5. So I think that the amendment actually makes the bill better. It seeks to further the intent of what we set out to do when we went into this, was to save the county's money and get nonviolent misdemeanors who are simply waiting for a trial, and when they get to that trial, they get time served, and they're simply there because they don't have the money to bond out. It makes it a better bill. So I really was looking forward to working on bail bond reform this year, and this will actually help the bill attain that goal. So I support the amendment.
Lady from 51st, Dr. Fleischauer.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And I want to thank the gentleman for offering the amendment as well. I also support it for financial reasons, but to me, the main reason to support this is because we have something in our country that is called "you are innocent until proven guilty." And it doesn't say you're innocent if you can afford to pay for bail. It says you are innocent until proven guilty. And right now, for a lot of low-level offenses, we are sending our children, our neighbors, to jail. They are losing their jobs. They are jeopardizing their family relationships, and sometimes they are sitting there for months and years without being brought to trial. I have to congratulate the chair for all of the really excellent work he is having our committee do on trying to fix our broken criminal justice system, but I think this amendment helps. There is a movement sweeping across the country right now called Right on Crime, and it is primarily led by Republicans because of both of these constitutional issues, which I'm talking about, and also these financial issues. So I think for these low-level offenses that are really wrecking people's lives, we should give them the same opportunity that anyone would have if they had enough money to be able to pay for bail. So I strongly urge support of this amendment, and I hope that this body will pass it.
The gentleman, the 27th, Dr. Schott.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I wonder if the sponsor, the gentleman from the 4th, would yield for questions.
Yes, gentleman does yield.
Thank you. Hypothetically, if your amendment is passed, if someone is picked up on the street with equipment to insert heroin into their veins and has a small amount of heroin on their person, your amendment would require that person be released on recognizance, correct? Personal recognizance.
Unless good cause is shown.
All right. Second day, let's say that's day one, the person's let out. Second day, the person comes back, he's been hanging out at the local library, same situation, they bring him before the magistrate. Same result, personal recognizance?
I think that's good cause shown to be able to keep him then.
Not necessarily though, right?
Not necessarily, but I would say I could argue that that's good cause. We've now had him twice with the same thing.
If the third day, same situation?
Yes.
Same situation. Now, if the amendment is defeated, the magistrate would have the ability to attach conditions on that first release, would he not?
He would have the ability, yes.
Yeah, so if he's familiar with this person, for instance, and the person's reputation in the community is as a user, a regular user, but had never been brought before, then he could attach a condition such as you need to be on home confinement, electronic monitoring, no use of controlled substances or so forth, and still release him, but with those conditions. Isn't that the way the bill reads?
Right, but even with then you could say there's good cause shown and do it the same way, the other way too.
If the magistrate understands the meaning of a good cause, correct?
Right.
Okay, that's all.
The gentleman, the 29th, Dr. Steele.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. You know, I think that there are folks here that want to advance this type of reform, and there are some that don't. There are some that worry about this based off what we've seen in other states. And I'd really like you to think about how this is going to play out in the real world. One of the concerns that I have overall about this concept is the chilling effect it will have on our police. Our police, and we've seen this where it's happened in other states, our police officers are encountering these situations where they know that this person's going to be released on a PR bond, they're not going to get held, and then they're not going to show back up to court, and then there's going to be a court case that he has to take time off or get overtime on, you know, going to court at 9 in the morning when he's already been on shift from 12 to 8. So there's a chilling effect that happens in some of these situations where law enforcement encounter a crime and they say, well, I'm just not going to report it because it's not worth my time. It's a waste of my time. I'm just going to, you know, let this person go and be about my business. If this amendment passes, then we're going to bring that up in the drug atmosphere, with possession of narcotics, with people, as the chairman just pointed out, that could be users of heroin that are in need of our assistance. And just because someone's come into contact with law enforcement, we can't assume that that is always going to result in some type of punitive situation. As a matter of fact, a lot of times, contact with law enforcement for those who are addicted, more often than not now, is resulting in therapeutic situations. So we have a situation where this police officer, as the chairman described, is going to encounter someone with paraphernalia on their person, with heroin on their person, and that police officer is going to look at this situation and say, okay, here's what's getting ready to happen. I'm going to arrest this person. I'm going to take him up to the magistrate, and then the magistrate's going to let him go, and they're going to go right back out and do this. What's the point of stopping my day for 3 hours for this issue? They're not going to do it. Now, you're going to have a hard time, if this amendment passes, getting law enforcement to respond to people that are crying out for our help. Because law enforcement's going to look at this and the effect of it and say, it's just not worth my time. I'm going to have to deal with that person again in an hour. I'm just going to let them sit there and do what they're doing. And they're going to walk off. And that's not what we need. You know, we have various measures going on, you know, in this building that are designed to help get these people treatment. There's involuntary commitment bills that are going through the Capitol. There's all kinds of bills going through the Capitol where we are trying to give our law enforcement, our hospitals, our nurses, our physicians, our social workers more tools to help the people that are going to be subject to this amendment. And what this amendment is going to do is 9 times out of 10, take away contact with the first person that's going to help them, and that's law enforcement. So I would encourage you to vote this amendment down. I understand why it's there. I understand that we need to be looking at simple possession of narcotics in a different way and treat the medical aspect of it. But I think what the amendment ultimately does is it discourages law enforcement, that first point of contact, from getting that person help. Thank you.
The lady in the 32nd, Douglas Staggers.
I really enjoy some of these debates. I do want to point out that there is a Schedule II drug that is really dangerous as far as I'm concerned. It's testosterone. And I think you all ought to be locked up if they get you caught with your testosterone shot in the car. So we need to use some common sense on some of these debates.
Does the gentleman on the floor, Canestraro, wish to close debate on the amendment? The question before the House is the adoption of the amendment. Those in favor of the amendment will say aye. Aye. Those opposed will say no. No. Noes appear to have it. Division's been demanded. Roll call's been demanded. Is demand sustained? Demand is sustained. The question before the House is the adoption of the amendment. Those in favor of the amendment will vote aye. Those opposed will vote no. The clerk will prepare the machine. Has every member voted? If so, the clerk will close the machine and ascertain the result. On this question, there are 35 ayes, 16 nays, 5 members absent not voting. Less than a majority having voted in the affirmative, the chair declares the amendment lost. Are there further amendments? If not, the bill will be advanced to third reading. Lady in the 49th.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'd like to ask unanimous consent for further consideration of committee substitute for Senate Bill 323 for a technical amendment.
The lady from the 49th asks unanimous consent to return to committee substitute for Senate Bill 323 for the purposes of offering a technical amendment. Are there objections? Chair hears no objections. Are there amendments to committee substitute for Senate Bill 323?
Delegate Schott moves to amend the committee substitute on page 2, section 2, line 2 by striking the number 13A and inserting in lieu thereof the number 5.
Gentleman in the 35th, Delegate Capito.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. This is merely a technical correction and a code citation correction, so I would urge the adoption of the amendment.
The question before the House is the adoption of the amendment as just read by the clerk. Those in favor will please say aye. Aye. Those opposed will please say no. The ayes have it. Chair declares the amendment adopted. Bill will be advanced to third reading. Next bill on second reading.
Committee substitute for House Bill 2433, modifying the school calendar to begin not earlier than Labor Day and end prior to Memorial Day.
Are there amendments?
Delegate J. Kelly moves to amend the bill on page 3, section 45, line 57, by striking the words May 31st and inserting in lieu thereof the words June 7th.
The question before the House is the adoption of the amendment. Are there members who wish to speak to the amendment? The gentleman on the 10th, Delegate Kelly.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. During the discussions with several people about House Bill 2433, there has been some concern that maybe there were not enough days to make up any snow days or to allow people to take time off to go deer hunting. So as a matter of compromise, I offer the amendment to change the ending date from May the 31st to June the 7th, and I request a favorable vote. Thank you.
The gentleman on the 27th, Delegate Ellington.
Mr. Speaker, if I may speak to the bill, the amendment.
Yes, gentleman's recognized.
All right. To the members, the current ComSub recommends 195 days roughly of instructional time from September 1st to May 31st. So to get 180 days instruction into that 195 weekdays, this amendment would give an extra 5 days, so it does help for a little discretion there. So I would support the amendment.
The gentleman on the 66th, Delegate Espinoza.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. With regard to the amendment, I just thought it would be important to point out that, while I think the amendment is well-intentioned to try to address some of the concerns, specifically to the concerns that have been raised by the NRA, while well-intentioned, the amendment will likely not address the issue that I think is being expressed. And I'm referring to, on your desk, you see a letter there from the NRA, their Institute for Legislative Action. You'll see there beneath the picture, it says House Bill 2433 will impose a one-size-fits-all calendar on all public school systems in West Virginia. Currently, each school system may set its own calendar as long as they meet the 180-day requirement. Such a change may result in school systems eliminating the week off for the opening of deer season in order to still meet this requirement. Now, again, I will certainly acknowledge that the amendment offered by my friend from Wood certainly is well-intentioned, but I'd also point your attention or direct your attention to another document that I left on your desk. It's a 8.5 by 14 page that shows what how our school districts have utilized the flexibility that we granted them just a few short years ago with the passage of Senate Bill 359. And I think this also demonstrates how the proposed amendment does little to really address the concern that I think he raises. So if you look down through counties, and I suspect you'll gravitate to your own county, but if you look for the first instructional day, based on the flexibility that school districts are the flexibility afforded to our school districts, you'll see that 54 of our school districts are beginning their calendar year in August. The proposed amendment would extend the new limitation in the legislation that without a waiver from the state board would restrict school districts till May 31st. The gentleman's amendment extends that to June 7th, but arguably, that will do virtually nothing to really help school districts who want to ensure that they're able to preserve time for holidays, sufficient holidays, also for deer hunting, particularly for those school districts that are attempting to complete their first semester by the December break. And again, I would, on the long sheet, would direct your attention to those school districts who apparently have found it important, valuable in order to complete their first semester by the December break. You'll see a total of 32 of our school districts have utilized the current flexibility afforded under Senate Bill 359 to, in fact, end their first semester by the school break. Now, I think I've heard some conjecture that perhaps that's not really an important thing for our school districts. Perhaps not a lot of evidence that completing the calendar by your first semester by the Christmas break really helps results. But I'm told, and again, I'll save discussion on this till tomorrow. But again, I just want to point out the fallacy in thinking that extending the calendar, the restriction to June 7th is really going to help school districts achieve some of those other goals. Finally, I would point your attention to the last column there that shows the last scheduled instructional term, the last day of the instructional term. I did a quick scan through there, and I think I find only one school district that currently extends past that June 7th proposed date by my colleague's amendment. So likely you would extend the school year, beyond what most school districts have found is a good time to extend their dates through, well past the testing window. I think it's generally accepted that the farther you extend your school year past the testing window, the less valuable those days are. Certainly our educators will do their best to continue instruction during those additional days, but the gentleman's amendment, again, will likely, because of that September 1st restriction without a waiver from the state board, will extend the school year well beyond the testing window. So just wanted to point that out to you. I think I can certainly understand how folks want to be responsive, want to make sure that the NRA's concern is addressed. I just want to point out to you that I think the premise that this is going to address that concern is not borne out by the facts. So, Mr. Speaker, appreciate the opportunity to address that question.
The gentleman, the 43rd, Doug Thompson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Would the Chairman of Education yield for a question?
Yeah. Chairman does yield for a question.
Yes, sir.
Thank you, Chairman. Chairman, currently right now, can county boards of education set their own attendance policy for students? Like you're allowed to miss so many days before exams?
Yes, they can.
Okay. And I'm from Randolph County, so if students they wanted to go hunting really bad, they can't wait to get that buck, could they save up their days, make sure they don't have any absences, and on the first week of deer season, if we did have school during that day, could they take a day off and go?
They could, but that's why they don't learn cursive.
Well, we're going to teach that now to 5th grade, which thank you all very much.
Well,
I appreciate that.
Some 5th graders hunt too, I guess. Huh?
Okay. Yeah, they do. Okay, so the county can set the policy for attendance.
Yes, sir.
So this would really not infringe upon their day to go hunt if they want to, and they also have the weekend.
They can, and they could also apply for exemption to that, a waiver to it.
Okay. Thank you. I have no further questions for Chairman. Mr. Speaker, permission to speak to the amendment? Thank you. Guys, I really think this is a good amendment, and I think we all should be supporting it. I am a proponent, of the Second Amendment. I own guns. I come from a long family of hunters. My dad and my uncles and grandfather, we've been generational hunters. The NRA, though, does not need to be dictating educational policy. So while I respect their concern, I urge adoption of this amendment. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The gentleman, the 67th, Doug Doyle.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I would just like to correct what I think might be a misunderstanding that could have resulted from what the other gentleman from Jefferson had to say. It is not this amendment that starts the calendar on September 1. The bill starts the calendar on September 1. All the amendment does is create a little bit of flexibility at the end so that the end is not May 31st, the end is June 7th, and allows whatever flexibility is allowed in there. So anyway, I just want to make sure everybody understands that. Thank you.
The gentleman, the 29th, Doug Steele.
Yes, Mr. Speaker, would the gentleman from the 66 yield?
Gentleman does yield.
I've been wondering, because I got the communication from the NRA as well, and I think the primary concern is the hunting season, the deer season that comes up around November, around the Thanksgiving holiday. Is that correct?
That's my understanding from my conversations with the NRA and looking at their communications, that there is concern about that window. That's
Okay.
their primary concern, as I understand it.
And from what I also understand, there's a concern about the trout, beginning of the trout season, which comes up around the spring break holiday as well.
I had not heard that one, but it wouldn't be surprising. And for me, to my colleague from the 29th, I think those concerns, demonstrate the peril of trying to dictate a one-size-fits-all approach for our school districts. I think it's obvious that different school districts are going to want to try to address those type of concerns. I personally couldn't begin to think of every possible unique situation around the state. I think that's one of the benefits of the flexibility we provided them. Now, again, I appreciate my colleague from Wood trying to address the one concern, the hunting concern. Perhaps that's I don't know when trout season is, so I don't know if it addresses that, but trying to address that through a one-size-fits-all approach, even with the extension that the gentleman's amendment will offer, I think is almost doomed to failure, and is going to result in local districts, unless they come hat in hand to the state school board and get a waiver, it's going to make it difficult for them to address those things.
Well, one of the things, and you were the education chair, and one of the things that somebody mentioned to me this morning that's really stuck in my mind about this issue is just a couple years ago, or even last year, we did a whole lot of preaching about local control, and it seems that this amendment and the bill is kind of not in the spirit of that local control. I mean, would you agree with that?
I absolutely do, and again, want to try to confine my response to the gentleman's amendment, but I'll certainly speak to that more tomorrow. But again, it's trying to guess what's important to every district. For example, the ability to get in complete your first semester by the December break. I spoke to my local superintendent this morning and asked, what will this restriction, even with the proposed amendment, what effect would that have? And the response I received was that it really would, extending the date to June 7th or possible June 7th, really would do very little to help that first semester achieve their goal. They indicated that based on the feedback they received from their parents, even whether or not it really adds to the educational outcomes, just having students be able to finish their first semester by the Christmas break, the holiday break, being able to just basically decompress, start anew when they come back in January, that was something that they viewed as valuable. My concern is that even with the gentleman's proposed amendment, you're really doing nothing to address the flexibility in that first semester, other than adding additional days that are likely not to be that productive.
Okay. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Appreciate the questions.
Does the sponsor wish to close debate on the amendment?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Really, it's a simple amendment. All we're trying to do is to change the closing date of school from not later than May the 31st to June the 7th. We're trying to allow a few extra days for makeup. The bill has, or the amendment has the support of a number of members of the State Board of Education. It has the support of parents, has the support of teachers, has the support of students, has the support of a number of members in this body. And I urge passage of the amendment. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The question before the House is the adoption of the amendment. Those in favor of the amendment will say aye. Aye. Those opposed will say no. No. Ayes appear to have it. Ayes do have it. Chair declares the amendment adopted. Are there further amendments? If not, the bill will be advanced. Next bill on second reading.
Committee substitute for House Bill 2877, relating to charging a fee for parking in an accessible parking space bearing the international symbol of access.
Are there amendments? If not, the bill will be advanced.
House Bill 4030, increasing limit for application for original appointment as a firefighter to 40 years of age for honorably discharged veterans.
Are there amendments? If not, the bill will be advanced.
House Bill Committee substitute for House Bill 4094, continuing the foster care ombudsman.
Are there amendments?
Delegates Pack, Hill, and Summers move to amend the bill on page 2, section 102.
For what purpose does the gentleman from the 28th seek recognition?
To explain the amendment in lieu of having it read, Mr.
Are there objections to having the amendment explained in lieu of having it read? The chair hears no objection to the gentleman from the 28th to explain the amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The purpose of the underlying bill is to add clarification to the Ombudsman's position that was created last year. After additional discussions with the Ombudsman and the Attorney General's office, this amendment is being proposed to ease into the work for the Ombudsman. The amendment removes sending cases on to the Attorney General for enforcement, but adds a quarterly report to the Governor and an annual report to LACRA describing the types of complaints the Ombudsman is addressing and what is the resolution of those complaints. This will give the Ombudsman and the Legislature time to review whether additional authority to pass complaints on to the Attorney General is necessary. It is an issue that I will be closely monitoring to ensure the Ombudsman has all the authority that she needs to satisfactorily resolve the complaints of foster children and foster parents. Mr. Speaker, that's the amendment. I would urge its adoption.
The question is on adoption of the amendment. Are there members who wish to speak to the amendment? If not, those in favor of the amendment will say aye. Aye. Those opposed will say no. The ayes have it. Chair declares the amendment adopted. Are there further amendments? If not, the bill will be advanced to third reading. Are there further bills on second reading? If not, bills on first reading.
Committee substitute for House Bill 4026, exempting businesses transporting scrap tires, waste tires, or other used tires from certain statutory provisions.
The bill will be advanced.
House Bill 4353, creating a national nexus requirement between prior criminal conduct and initial licensure decision-making.
The bill will be advanced.
House Bill 4476, providing for the timely and efficient collection, submission, testing, retention, and disposition of forensic evidence in sexual assault cases.
The bill will be advanced.
House Bill 4496, removing the specific mandate of the Board of Risk and Insurance Management to purchase liability insurance for the Division of Corrections.
The bill will be advanced.
House Bill 4501, relating to the ability to refuse offenders for a commitment to a jail.
The bill will be advanced.
House Bill 4510, prohibiting bodily intrusion by an inmate upon any person at any correctional facility.
The bill will be advanced. Are there further bills on first reading? If not, leaves of absence. Lady from the 49th.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. For our colleagues, Delegate Boggs, Coles, Hornbuckle, Mant, Rodriguez.
Are there objections to leaves being granted? Chair hears no objections. Leaves should be granted. Remarks by members? Remarks by members. The gentleman of the 50th, Doug Angelucci.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I just want to take a moment to tell the body that we have a gentleman here that's been a mentor to me, Delegate Dave Pethel. Today is his birthday, so I'd like to take a moment for everyone to honor him on his special day. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Are there further remarks? The gentleman of the 60th, Doug Wilson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Recently, a jurist issued a decision which raised in my mind some questions and apparently established new standards in our comportment and how we do business in this body, how we do the people's business here. Sir, I'm going to request 3 rulings from the chair to help me understand how we function here now based on this new ruling and these new standards that have been established. You know, it was explained to me when I was a young private in the Army by a drill sergeant as I walked past a candy wrapper that was lying on the ground. He said, "Killer, you've just established a new standard. You walk past that garbage, left it lying on the ground, and that now established a standard that that's what we do. We leave garbage lying on the ground. Is that the standard you want to establish?" I said, "No, drill sergeant." I went back, I picked it up, I threw it away, and have made a habit of doing that throughout my life. Sir, I need to ask you, Does the legislative immunity, I'm asking for a ruling from the chair, does the legislative immunity which we are afforded while we are in session here, my understanding of it is that the point is to prevent any of us from being arrested and thereby allow us to continue representing the people we represent, to prevent anyone from being deprived of representation during the session. Does that legislative immunity extend beyond the parameters of the legislative session, time-wise? And also, I need to ask, does it consider actions that took place during the session as being protected after the session ends? Sir, can you give a ruling from the chair on that?
The chair cannot. The gentleman's raised what would be the equivalent of a legal question to which a court would have to opine rather than the chair.
Thank you, sir. I will seek legal advice on that. Next question. The next issue that I would like to raise. If I may, I'd like to give a little background. I am not by nature a civilized man. It doesn't come easily to me. I don't like it. I don't like behaving in a civilized manner. It's not the most effective tool that I have in my toolbox. As a matter of fact, I've spent most of my adult life solving issues through the orchestration and execution of overwhelming lethal force. I'm pretty good at it. I've retired from that. I came to this body and I've learned new ways of doing business. I've learned something we call civil discourse. I'm not by any stretch of the imagination going to claim that I've mastered it. I'm still working on it, and I hope to learn more and I hope to get better at it. So I've been observing many people in this chamber who are doing a good job. However, I've become confused recently. Specifically as a result of the ruling that we're discussing. Sir, I ask for a ruling from the chair. Do we here in this body solve our issues? Do we address issues? Are we allowed to orchestrate and execute violent force on the floor of this House?
We're not.
Thank you, sir. I didn't want to resort back to my earlier behavior. I'm learning new ways, and I'm grateful to do so. Sir, my third question, and I need a ruling on this if you will. Do we continue to hold sacred the time during which we pray and we pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America?
We do.
Thank you, sir. Would you please clarify for me how we're supposed to behave during that time and how we will control access to this House? Thank you, sir.
For the benefit of all members, the chair will lay out at this time what the chair's instructions to the sergeant-at-arms and doorkeepers are with respect to entry into this chamber at any point during the course of our deliberations and conduct of business here on the House. As members of the body, we do have a right to be present on the floor of this House during the conduct of business. The chair has instructed the sergeant-at-arms and doorkeeper that during the opening exercises, and opening exercises only, specifically the conduct of the opening prayer each morning and the offering of the Pledge of Allegiance to the flag of the United States each day, the chair has asked the sergeant-at-arms and doorkeepers to keep the north and south and west entrances to this chamber sealed. That's these doors on the side and the doors in the back, but leave the rear door entrance accessible to members at all times, including the conduct of opening exercises. When members approach the door during the conduct of opening exercises, the sergeant-at-arms and doorkeepers will be on the exterior of the chamber and will advise members that those exercises are being conducted and ask for your cooperation in not entering the chamber during the conduct of those exercises, but will not stop you from doing so. The rear doors of this chamber will be accessible to members at all times when this House is called to order. The gentleman on the 29th, Dr. Steele.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. If you just indulge me for one moment, on January 28th, 1986, 34 years ago, the NASA Space Shuttle Orbiter undertaking mission STS-51L in the 10th flight of Space Shuttle Challenger broke apart 73 seconds into its flight, killing all 7 crew members, 5 NASA astronauts, 1 payload specialist, and a civilian school teacher. I'd ask all of us in here to join together today in a brief moment of silence to remember them.
All members and guests in the galleries will please rise for a brief moment of silence. Thank you. Members and guests may be seated. Introduction of guests. Introduction of guests. The gentleman, the 22nd, Douglas Jeffries.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'm pleased to introduce our Doctor of the Day, is Morgan Strickler from Huntington, West Virginia. And if she would stand, and the House make her welcome.
Are there further introductions? If not, miscellaneous business. If none, lady from the 49th.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move subject to announcements that the House adjourn until 11 a.m. on Wednesday.
The question before the House is the lady's motion that's subject to announcements. The House stand adjourned until 11 a.m. tomorrow. Are there announcements? Lady from the 49th.
Mr. Speaker, your Committee on Rules will meet tomorrow morning at 10:45 behind the chamber.
The gentleman, the 27th, Doug Schott.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The House Committee on the Judiciary will meet tomorrow evening, January 29th at 5 p.m. in the Judiciary Committee room. The agenda will be posted and dinner will be served approximately 6 p.m. One unrelated announcement to that committee. If you are from Monongalia County or Kanawha County or in general have an interest in the minor league baseball situation, I'm in the process of preparing a resolution. I would like to get some information to support. I've got plenty of information on the 2 minor league clubs in Mercer County, but I need some more information regarding the ball club here, as well as I think the one in Morgantown may even be threatened due to the schedule change. So please see me if you're interested in helping with that resolution. I'll be working on it in the next few days. Thank you.
The gentleman, the 10th, I got Chris.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Your Committee on the Finance will meet tomorrow evening at 5 p.m. for a budget presentation from the Arts, Cultural, and History Department. Please be aware that the budget hearing will take place in the East Wing in the Government Organization Committee room for the next 2 days. We are having our public announcement system being replaced in the Finance Committee. Thank you.
The gentleman, the 62nd, Doug Bibby.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Your Committee on Veterans Affairs and Homeland Security will meet this afternoon in the House Government Organization Room at 2 p.m. The agenda is posted.
The lady from 38th, Doug Graves.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Your Committee on Pensions and Retirement will meet today in the House Finance Room at 2 p.m. The agenda has been posted.
The gentleman, the 46th, Doug Martin.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Your Committee on Industry and Labor will not meet tomorrow. Thank you.
The gentleman, the 17th, Doug Rohrbach.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Your Committee on Seniors, Children, and Family Issues will meet tomorrow at 3 o'clock in the Government Organization Room.
The gentleman, the 48th, Doug Queen.
Your Committee on Small Business, Entrepreneurship, and Economic Development will meet tomorrow at 1 p.m. in the House Government Organization Room. The agenda will be posted.
The gentleman, the 10th, I got Kelly.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Your Committee on Energy will meet today in the Judicial Conference Room at 4 p.m. Republican members will caucus in the Speaker's office or in the Chairman's office at 3:30. Thank you.
The gentleman, the 13th, I got Cadle.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I've got a tour set up to the State Police Academy for 6 o'clock tomorrow evening. Anybody that's interested, get a hold of me. I'm going to hang out here for a little while after session. But the address is 135 Academy Drive, and we're going to try to 6:30 in that time frame. I know we've all had a lot of busy meetings and stuff after evening events, but that looked like it was about the best time this week, and I know if we don't get it done, we're not going to be able to go. So anyway, thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The gentleman, the 35th, Doug Nelson.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Speaker. Tomorrow is West Virginia Bankers Legislative Day. There'll be more than 50 bankers from all of our communities. They'll be roaming the chamber as well as the halls between 9 and session time. Please make some time for them. Thank you.
The gentleman, the 53rd, Doug Jennings.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The Committee on Fire Departments and EMS will meet tomorrow, January 29th at 9 o'clock in the House Gov room. The agenda will be posted.
The gentleman, the 16th, Doug Linville.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Your Committee on Technology and Infrastructure will meet tomorrow morning at 9 a.m. in the House Judiciary Committee room, and the agenda has been posted.
The gentleman, the 28th, Doug Pack.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I have two announcements. Your Committee on Health and Human Resources will meet today at 4 p.m. in the East Wing Conference Room. The agenda has been posted. Additionally, Mr. Speaker, Republican members of this House will caucus here in the chamber, and we will begin at 1 p.m.
Gentleman the fourth, Canestraro.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Democratic members of the Committee on Veterans Affairs and Homeland Security will caucus at 1:45 p.m. today in room 231E, which is the office all the way at the end of the East Wing. Again, at 1:45 p.m. today in room 231E.
The gentleman the 50th, Caputo.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The Democrats will caucus immediately upon the floor session in House Gov.org. Democratic members immediately upon adjournment in House Gov.org. Thank you.
The lady in 32nd, Dr. Staggers.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The Democratic members of Health and Human Resources will caucus 15 minutes before the meeting in room 230. Thank you.
Are there further announcements? If not, the question before the House is the motion that the House stand adjourned until 11 a.m. tomorrow. Those in favor will say aye. Those opposed will say no. The ayes have it. Chair declares the motion adopted. The House is adjourned until 11 a.m. tomorrow.
The Senate will please come to order. The Senate will please come to order. All those not having privileges of the floor will please vacate the chamber. And with those on the floor and our guests in the gallery, please rise as we are led in prayer this morning by Pastor Jesse Wagoner. He's a senior pastor at Mount Calvary Baptist Church here in Charleston, West Virginia. And then please remain standing as we are led in the pledge this morning by the senior senator from the 6th, Pastor Wagoner.
Let us pray. Dear Heavenly Father, you've told us in your word that every good gift comes from above, from you, the Father of lights. So we pause to give you thanks today for the gift of this day. We give you thanks for the gift of a great land that we call West Virginia. We give you thanks for the gift of a great people, and we give you thanks that we have the high privilege of calling ourselves West Virginians. Dear God, we ask you your blessing on all those who make this state great, those who are today in the factories, in the schools, at their desk, in the home, in the mines, on the farms, those who are in the firehouse, in the courthouse, and those who have gathered in this, the people's house. We ask that you might give us all a knowledge of your presence and the wisdom and the strength to carry out our duties in a way that helps our fellow man and brings glory to you. We do ask your particular blessing that would rest on these senators who have gathered to do our state's business and as they seek to be about your business. We humbly seek these favors from the loving hands of our God in the name of our Lord and our Savior, Jesus Christ. For yours is the kingdom and the glory and the power, both now and forever. Amen.
Amen. Thank you, Pastor. The senior senator from the 6th.
Will the guests in the gallery and those on the floor please join me in reciting the pledge? I pledge of allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. You may be seated. Reading of the Journal.
West Virginia Legislature Senate Journal, January 27th, 2020. The Senate met at 11:08 a.m. Senator Carmichael, Mr. President,
The junior senator from the 8th requests unanimous consent that further reading of the Journal be dispensed with and that it be approved as having been read. Is there objection? Chair hears none. So ordered. Introduction of guests. On behalf of the Senate, it is my pleasure to welcome our honorary pages for the day. Please stand and be recognized when your name is called. As guest of the senator from Wyoming County, we have Brooklyn Toller, Eli Toller, Sawyer Kenny, Tanner Atkins, Madeline Brown, and Kaylin Spence. And as guest of the senator from Greenbrier, we have Alexander Vogelsong And as guest of the senator from Harrison County, Audrey Minnick, Charles Gray Isaacs, and Elijah Amstone. If they would all please rise, they're standing in the front, and the Senate give them a warm welcome. Thank you. You may be seated. Further introductions, recognize the senator from Morgan County.
Thank you, Mr. President. On behalf of my senior senator from the 15th and the senators from the 16th, we have guests from Berkeley County in the North Gallery, Dr. April McDonough from Blue Ridge Community Technical College and her son Kyle, and I would ask my colleagues in the Senate to make them welcome.
Junior senator from the 17th.
Thank you, Mr. President. On behalf of the Senate, I would like to welcome our doc for the day. In the rear of the chamber, we have with us Dr. Morgan Stickler from Huntington, West Virginia. If you wouldn't mind standing, let the Senate give you a warm welcome.
Further introductions, the junior senator from the 4th.
Thank you, Mr. President. On your behalf and mine, I'd like to introduce Bo Burgess and the other pastors from the West Virginia Capitol Connection in our North Gallery. Can you all please stand, please? Thank you for being here today, and would the Senate please make them welcome.
The senator from Marion County.
Thank you, Mr. President. On behalf of the senator from Monongalia, it's our pleasure to introduce students from South Middle School Youth and Government. We have in the South Gallery, if they would stand as I call out their names, we have the teacher, Angela Conley. She would stand. Students, Lauren Blosser, Clara Holmes, Callum Lorimer, Kimberly McClung, Jackie Papes, Paige Tuttle, Jaden Twyman, and Kirsten Timon McCormick. If the Senate would make them welcome.
The senator from Wyoming County.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'd like to present all the Page parents of all the students that came up today to Page from Wyoming County. Tara Booth, Kathy Harless, Mark and Sandra Toller, Corinne Kennedy, Chris Brunny, and Dina Spence. Would you please stand so we can welcome you?
The senator from Wood County.
Thank you, Mr. President. I was going to just to piggyback on Senator from Putnam's introduction. So the pastors are here from the Capitol Connection. I'm sure most or all of you all have been visited by these good men, and we appreciate very much what they do. They do this at the national level in D.C. and many chapters in many states across the country, including West Virginia. And I know that we all personally very much appreciate their coming today and praying with everybody and giving a little gift every year. And so I just wanted to introduce a few friends of mine. Actually, the first gentleman's a man I went to Bible college with back in the 80s, and we used to teach Sunday school together, and we were in jail together a few times, I think, too, if you remember that. Just kidding. He wasn't. He's a good man and a dear friend, Pastor Corey Bain, and he pastors in Martinsburg. And stay standing up there, Pastor. I'm going to say, go ahead and name the other men up there. Pastor Ted Nance, Nathaniel Burgess, Pastor Bo Burgess, who was just introduced, if you could stand, Pastor, Eli Drake, Wesley Armstrong, Andrew Dent, and Pastor Daniel Dent. Did I get everybody? Is that everybody? So thank you, gentlemen, for coming. We appreciate you very much, and if the Senate would make them feel welcome.
The senator from Nicholas County.
Thank you, Mr. President. On behalf of the senator from Upshur County and I, we would like to introduce in our North Gallery our Grant County Commissioner, Scott Miley. If he would stand, would the Senate make him welcome?
Further introductions? The junior senator from the 17th.
Thank you, Mr. President. In the North Gallery with me today, I have a couple of visiting pharmacy students that wanted to come along, see how the legislative process works. If Amy Vasquez and Nicholas Backel from Marshall University, as well as Claire Akima from University of Charleston Schools of Pharmacy, wouldn't mind standing, let's give you a warm welcome.
Are there further introductions? The senator from Boone County.
Thank you, Mr. President. On behalf of the senators from the 7th and the 6th District, we're very pleased to have in the gallery to my left the Tug Valley cheerleaders. If they would stand and we'll make them welcome. They're 3-time state champions. Welcome.
Are there further introductions? Further introductions? Communications from the House.
The Clerk of the House announced the passage by that body of committee substitute for House Bill 4011, reorganizing various boards and authorities for the licensing and oversight of trades, occupations, and professions.
Message be received, referred to Committee on Government Organization with a second reference to the Committee on the Judiciary.
Committee substitute for House Bill 4129 relating to adoption.
Message be received, referred to the Committee on Children and Families.
House Bill 4146 relating to credit for reinsurance.
Message be received, referred to the Committee on Banking and Insurance.
House Bill 4149 relating to insurance.
Message be received, referred to the Committee on Banking and Insurance.
House Bill 4166 prohibiting certain sex offenders from being in a supervisory position over children.
Message be received, referred to Committee on the Judiciary.
House Bill 4411 relating to the West Virginia Residential Mortgage Lender, Broker, and Servicer Act.
Message be received, referred to the Committee on Banking and Insurance. Are there further communications from the House?
No, sir.
Communications from the Executive.
There are none.
Reports from standing committees.
Your Committee on the Judiciary has had under consideration Senate bills 449, 450, 451, 452, 453, 454, 455, 456, 457, 458, 459, 460, 461, 462, 463, 464, 465, 466, and 467, Department of Commerce rule relating to Small Business Innovation Research and Small Business Technology Transfer Matching Funds Program, and reports back a committee substitute for same with the recommendation that the committee substitute do pass. Respectfully submitted, Charles S. Trump IV, Chair.
Report will be received.
Your Committee on Banking and Insurance has had under consideration Senate Bill 508, removing mandate Board of Risk and Insurance Management purchase liability insurance for Division of Corrections, and reports the same back with the recommendation that it do pass. Respectfully submitted, Michael T. Azinger, Chair.
Report will be received.
Your Committee on Natural Resources has had under consideration Senate Bill 517, creating State Parks and Recreation Endowment Fund, and reports back a committee substitute for same, with the recommendation that the committee substitute do pass, but under the original double committee reference, first be referred to the Committee on Finance. Respectfully submitted, Bill Hamilton, Chair.
Report will be received, referred to the Committee on Finance.
Your Committee on Banking and Insurance has had under consideration Senate Bill 545, authorizing transfer of monies from Insurance Commission Fund to Workers' Compensation Old Fund, and reports the same back with the recommendation that it do pass, but under the original double committee reference, first be referred to the Committee on Finance. Respectfully submitted, Michael T. Azinger, Chair.
Report will be received. Under the bill's original double committee reference will be referred to the Committee on Finance.
Your Committee on Natural Resources has had under consideration Senate Bill 550, permitting leashed dogs tracked mortally wounded deer or bear, and reports back a committee substitute for same, with the recommendation that the committee substitute do pass. Respectfully submitted, Bill Hamilton, Chair.
Report will be received.
Your Committee on the Judiciary has had under consideration Senate Bill 597 relating to judicial branch members' salaries and pensions, and reports back a committee substitute for same, with the recommendation that the committee substitute do pass, but under the original double committee reference, first be referred to the Committee on Finance. Respectfully submitted, Charles S. Trump IV, Chair.
Report will be received under the original double committee reference, will be referred to the Committee on Finance.
That's all I have, sir.
Are there reports from select committees?
There are none.
Introduction of bills. The junior senator from the 17th.
Thank you, Mr. President. I request unanimous consent that Senate Bills 632 through 641 be considered introduced, read by their titles, and referred to the appropriate committees as shown on the chamber automation system.
Junior senator from the 17th requests unanimous consent that Senate Bill number 632 through Senate Bill number 641 be considered introduced, read by their titles, and referred to the appropriate committees as shown on the chamber automation system. Is there objection? Chair hears none, so ordered. Resolutions.
Senate Concurrent Resolution 13 by Senator Maynard, naming the Ira Noon Copley and Marie Copley Memorial Bridge.
Under the rules of the Senate, the resolution will lie over one day.
Senate Resolution 20 by Senators Seipolt and Smith, designating January 29th, 2020 as Preston County Day.
Under the rules of the Senate, the resolution will lie over one day.
Senate Resolution 21 by Senators Beach, Prezioso, Seipolt, Smith, Clements, and Maroney, celebrating achievements and contributions of Monongalia County.
Under the rules of the Senate, the resolution will lie over one day. Are there further resolutions?
No, sir.
Motions. Petitions.
I have a petition presented by Senator Seipolt from David Umling containing 102 signatures regarding series of petitions in support of Senate Bill 320, creating West Virginia Farm Fresh Dairy Act.
Petition will be received and referred to Committee on Health and Human Resources. Recognize the junior senator from the 17th.
Thank you, Mr. President. I request unanimous consent to return to the fourth order of business.
Is there objection? Chair hears none. Reports from standing committees.
Your Committee on the Judiciary has had under consideration Senate Bill 642, originating in committee, the West Virginia Consumer Credit and Protection Act, and reports the same back with the recommendation that it do pass. Respectfully submitted, Charles S. Trump IV, Chair.
Report will be received. Are there further reports?
No, sir.
Further petitions?
No, sir.
Unfit. Recognize the senior senator from the 5th.
Request consent to return to the second order of business.
Without objection, introduction of guests. Recognize the senior senator from the 5th.
And sorry, Mr. President, I was asleep at the switch here. I would like to introduce from TTA, Paul Davis and Jennifer Woodall that are in the gallery, and if they would stand and we give them a welcome.
Further introductions, the senator from Harrison County.
Thank you, Mr. President. I apologize not being in here at the start of the floor session, but I have some important introductions on behalf of myself and my senior senator from Braxton County, sir. It's your honor and mine to introduce the parents of some of our pages today. Please stand up when we say your name. Bringing Paige Alyssa Amstone down here is her mom, Sarah Amstone. And coming with our Paige Charlie Isaacs are both of his parents, Kevin and Melinda Isaacs. And with our Paige Audrey Minnick is her mother, Christina Sizemore. They do a great job bringing them down. Please make them feel welcome. Thank you all.
The senator from Greenbrier County.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'll be much briefer today. Just two introductions. Two folks from Greenbrier County here today. Alex, who's serving as a page, his dad, Scott, is here visiting with us. He's a teacher at Greenbrier East High School, and also our county commissioner, Tammy Tincher. If the Senate will please make Tammy and Scott welcome.
Are there further introductions? The senator from Upshur County.
Thank you, Mr. President. Today, and I don't know if they're in the gallery yet, but we've got some students from Capitol High School, and on behalf of the senators from the 17th and the 11th, I'd like to introduce Caitlin Seltzer, Olivia Jones, and the last girl is a special person. She's my granddaughter, Lexi Powell. Would you please make them welcome?
Are there further introductions? Unfinished business.
Senate Concurrent Resolution 12, naming the U.S. Army Private First Class Gary Alcott Berkheimer Memorial Bridge.
Resolution will be referred to Committee on Transportation and Infrastructure.
Senate Resolution 18, congratulating Chad Newsom for winning the Earl S. Dillard Insurance Agent of the Year Award.
The Senator from Marion County.
Thank you, Mr. President. I ask unanimous consent that the resolution be taken up for immediate consideration, committee reference be dispensed with, and the resolution placed upon its adoption.
Is there objection? Chair hears none. Clerk will please read the resolution.
Senate Resolution 18, congratulating Chad Newsom for winning the Earl S. Dillard Insurance Agent of the Year Award.
Question before the Senate is adoption of resolution. Is there discussion? The Senator from Marion County.
Thank you, Mr. President. Ladies and gentlemen of the Senate, it's my pleasure today to introduce a person that won the Earl S. Dillard Award. And this award is presented annually by the independent insurance agencies of West Virginia to those associate members who throughout their career have personified the qualities most admired in their profession. Last year it was my distinct honor to present this award to a good friend of mine, Doug Newsom. This year I have the distinct honor of presenting the award to his son, Chad Newsom. Chad, I've known all his life. I watched him grow up. He attended Fairmont Senior High School and attended Fairmont State University, West Virginia University. And he has a legacy. In 1998, Chad went to work for his father's insurance agency, becoming the fourth generation in his family to do so. In 2018, Chad was named president of the Hood Insurance Group, LLC. I have personally known Chad to be a dedicated public service, sitting on the board of directors for the Boys and Girls Club, the Marion County Chamber of Commerce, and co-chairman of the Marion County Chamber of Commerce annual dinner for the last 10 years. Probably one of the biggest events in Marion County. Chad is also an elected official. He's in his third term as councilman for the city of Pleasant Valley. Chad also sponsors seats at the Fairmont State University basketball games for underprivileged children. He also sponsors Fairmont Senior High School football team and many other client activities. He presently sits on the board as vice president of the IIAWV and has been treasurer for the past 3 years. Chad has demonstrated his excellence in his insurance industry and in his community, and for his efforts was presented the Earl S. Dillard Agent of the Year Award at the association's annual convention. It's my pleasure to introduce to this body Chad Newsom, and Mr. President, I support this resolution wholeheartedly.
Is there further discussion? Further discussion? Not, the question before the Senate is adoption of the resolution. All those in favor will say aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes appear to have, the ayes do have. I declare the resolution adopted. The junior senator from the 17th.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move the Senate stand in brief recess for the purpose of presenting the resolution.
Junior senator from the 17th moves that the Senate stand in recess for the purpose of presenting this resolution. All those in favor will say aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes appear to have, the ayes do have it. I declare the Senate in recess to present this resolution. Senate will please come to order. The Senate will please come to order. Is there further resolutions?
Yes, sir. Senate Resolution 19, recognizing Prestera Center for Mental Health Services.
The senator from Cabell County.
Thank you, Mr. President. I request unanimous consent that the resolution be taken up for immediate consideration, committee reference be dispensed with, and the resolution be placed upon its adoption.
Senator from Cabell County requests unanimous consent that the resolution be taken up for immediate consideration, committee reference be dispensed with, and the resolution be placed upon its adoption. Is there objection? Chair hears none. Clerk will please read the resolution.
Senate Resolution 19, recognizing Prestera Center for Mental Health Services for excellence in comprehensive community-based mental health and substance use treatment services.
The question before the Senate is adoption of the resolution. Is there discussion? The senator from Cabell County.
Thank you, Mr. President. It's a privilege for me to stand here today because I'm going to tell you about a program that needs to be replicated in every district in the state. It's just outstanding. I don't have words to describe how valuable this program is. Now, everybody knows, or most of us know, Prestera does great work and serves tens of thousands of people. But what you don't know about is the ACT team. ACT is an acronym, Assertive Community Treatment. And this is the ACT team for Huntington, Cabell County right here. What the ACT team does, it facilitates community living for people with the most severe and persistent mental illnesses, a history of lengthy inpatient psychiatric hospitalizations who have not completely benefited from traditional outpatient programs. Now, little background. Some of you know from my previous remarks in previous sessions that I grew up at a dinner table of 10. I'm the oldest. My brother Philip was next in line. Phil is the most charming, handsome, best athlete, nicest guy, tremendous musician, awesome brother, and at age 21, he was diagnosed with a bipolar disorder. So that's the hand he was dealt, Philip. Since that time, I mean, he didn't go on disability, he worked, went to Mass, said his rosary beads. He did everything he could to hang in there. But what we saw was psychiatric hospitalizations every 3 to 5 years, sometimes 2 years. For all these years, he's 65 now. So, you know, if you've been through this, you know what it is for the family, you know what it is for the person. It's hard. So anyway, we now have the entry of the ACT team. I don't know how long that's been, 8 years ago, Amy, whatever it was. And so the ACT team comes to your house every day and they make sure that you get your medication. You don't forget about it or say, I don't need it today. You take your medicine. Phil has not been in the hospital for, I would say, 8 or 9 years now. And he's doing really well. He's got his own apartment, which he's always had. One of the services they provide is they will take you to the grocery store. Hey, Phil, this was Amy said this. Phil, we'll take you to the grocery store anytime you want. Phil's answer, I've got my errand boy for that. Of course, you know who the errand boy is. So anyway, I could really go on, but what I want to say is this. These people are guardian angels. They're not the people that run the Prestera Center for Mental Health, although they deserve to be recognized. This is the ACT team. Night or day, they will come to your house if there's a crisis. And I think they have like a 97% success over the last couple of years. Can you imagine that? If we could replicate that success in our state agencies? So, without further ado, we have Marie Finley, Kim Courts, Amy Fields, Clarence Sales, Tiffany Smith, Richard Reveley, Josie Smith, Nicole Pendle, Mike Jett. And I got to tell you, I've been there. I've been late here a couple times trying to get that guy off the couch, get him away from Oprah or whatever he's watching on TV, say, hey, you got to go to your doctor. And they are relentless. And they get him to that doctor's appointment when he wants to sit there and smoke a couple more Marlboro Lights. They're relentless. They're guardian angels, and I urge adoption.
Is there further discussion? Further discussion? Not. The question before the Senate is adoption of the resolution. All those in favor will say aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes appear to have it. The ayes do have it. Declare the resolution adopted. Junior Senator from the 17th.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move the Senate stand in brief recess for the purpose of presenting the resolution.
Junior Senator from the 17th moves that the Senate stand in brief recess for the purpose of presenting this resolution. All those in favor will say aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes appear to have it. The ayes do have it. Declare the Senate in brief recess to present this resolution. Senate will please come to order. The Senate will please come to order. Are there further items under unfinished business?
No, sir.
Bills on third reading.
Engrossed Senate Bill 51, specifying forms of grandparent visitation. Third reading of the bill.
The question before the Senate is, shall the bill pass? Is there discussion? The senator from Morgan County.
Thank you, Mr. President. Senate Bill 51, reported by the Judiciary Committee, amends one section of the state code and would enact a new section of the state code. The amended section, both sections are in Chapter 48, Article 10, which relates to grandparent visitation. The amended section is Section 802, and the new section would be Section 803. In the amendment to Section 802, the new language specifies that in the court's discretion, an order granting visitation privileges to a grandparent may provide for daytime visits, overnight visits, and electronic communications. And that's defined within that section to include such things as email, Skype, FaceTime, text messaging. Our current law is silent on those methodologies for visitation. And then Section 803, which is new, contains language that had been in Section 802, largely relating to restrictions that may be imposed by the court when grandparental visitation is supervised. Be happy to try to answer questions, Mr. President, and otherwise I urge the passage of the bill.
Is there further discussion? Not, all those in favor will vote yea. Those opposed will vote nay. The clerk will prepare the machine. Senator from Wood County. Has every member voted? Has every member voted? If so, the clerk will close the machine and ascertain the results. On this question being 33 yeas, 0 nays, 1 absent and not voting, more than the majority of those present and voting, having voted in the affirmative, I declare the bill passed. Clerk will communicate the action of the Senate to the House.
Engrossed committee substitute for Senate Bill 191, creating felony offense of aggravated cruelty to animals. Third reading of the bill.
Question before the Senate is, shall the bill pass? Is there discussion? The senator from Morgan County.
Thank you, Mr. President. The committee substitute for Senate Bill 191 amends a single section of the state code. It's Chapter 61, Article 8, Section 19. It's existing section. 61, of course, is a criminal code. Article 8 are crimes against chastity, morality, and decency. And this relates to offenses regarding cruelty to animals. It actually creates an offense of aggravated cruelty to animals and defines the elements of that. Such terrible things as withholding sustenance, food, water from an animal, shelter, failure to provide care to end the suffering of an animal, the abandonment of an animal to die, and leaving an animal unattended in a motor vehicle that results in the death of the animal. There are criminal penalties provided, and there, under subsection B, there are penalties for torture or the malicious killing of an animal, enhancing the penalties. And this bill also, I believe, enhances penalties for subsequent offenses. I'd be happy to try to answer questions. Otherwise, I urge the passage of this bill.
Is there further discussion? If not, all those in favor will vote yea. Those opposed will vote nay. The clerk will prepare the machine. Has every member voted? Has every member voted? If so, the clerk will close the machine and ascertain the results. On this question, there being 31 yeas, 2 nays, 1 absent and not voting, more than the majority of those present and voting, having voted in the affirmative, I declare the bill passed. Clerk will communicate the action of the Senate to the House.
Engrossed committee substitute for Senate Bill 201, relating generally to criminal offenses of stalking and harassment. Third reading of the bill.
Question before the Senate is, shall the bill pass? Is there discussion? The senator from Morgan County.
Thank you, Mr. President. The committee substitute for Senate Bill 201 amends a single section of the state code. It's Chapter 61, Article 2, Section 9A. Chapter 61 is the criminal code. Article 2 contains crimes against persons. So this is our stalking and harassment statute. And this bill, the committee substitute, as it's here before us, synthesizes 2 or 3 different bills that have been introduced by various members of this body. It incorporates new definitions of the offenses and defines new terms, but for purposes of stalking, it defines an offense which criminalizes the offense of engaging in a course of conduct designed to place another in fear of another person or another person's safety, or to cause someone else to engage in conduct that does that. And that's a misdemeanor with a fine of up to $1,000 and up to 6 months in jail. The bill defines course of conduct, and if you look in the bill, the definition of course of conduct is in subdivision 2, subsection H of the bill. But it's a pattern of conduct composed of 2 or more acts in which a defendant directly or indirectly or through a third party by any action, method or device or means. And then there are subparts. A, follow, monitors, observes, surveils, threatens. B, engages in other non-consensual contact and or communications. Or C, interferes with or damages a person's property or pet. And it makes clear, Mr. President, that a course of conduct may include contact via electronic communication. So I wouldn't presume to speak for the sponsors of the bills, but I think this is designed in part to address the increase of harassing activity that occurs on the internet these days. The bill clarifies that the violation of a domestic violence protective order by violation of the section is a violation if it's against the subject of the domestic violence protection order. It adds that a violation of a personal safety order, those are personal safety orders that can be entered by the magistrates in West Virginia. A violation of the personal safety order is a felony where the subject of the order is the victim of the violation of the section of law related to that. As I say, it creates a new felony offense of harassing a person with the intent to cause another to harm themselves. And so this aspect of the bill is designed to address circumstance that I think was the subject of separate legislation by the senator from Jefferson County, where the horrible case we all heard and read about, where a person was incited to commit an act of suicide in a harassing manner through electronic communication. The bill will authorize the Governor's Committee on Crime, Delinquency, and Correction to promulgate emergency rules and legislative rules to help law enforcement implement this section. So I would be happy, Mr. President, to try to answer questions. I will compliment all the sponsors of this legislation and the other bills that were synthesized and amalgamated into it, and I urge the bill's passage.
Is there further discussion? Further discussion? If not, all those in favor will vote yea. Those opposed will vote nay. The clerk will prepare the machine. Has every member voted? Has every member voted? If so, the clerk will close the machine and ascertain the results. On this question being 33 yeas, 0 nays, 1 absent and not voting, more than a majority of those present and voting. Having voted in the affirmative, I declare the bill passed. Clerk will communicate the action of the Senate to the House.
Engrossed Senate Bill 523, extending deadline for municipalities to offer Social Security coverage to certain municipal retirement system members. Third reading of the bill.
The question before the Senate is, shall the bill pass? Is there discussion? The senator from Wood County.
SB 523 extends the deadline by which municipalities may offer Social Security benefits to their employees who are members of the West Virginia Municipal Police and Firefighter System. The new proposed deadline is October 1, 2021. It also removes the requirement that participating municipalities submit a joint plan to the state auditor thereby allowing an individual municipality to submit its own plan to offer Social Security benefits to its retirees under the MP FERS. I'm happy to answer questions. Otherwise, Mr. President, I urge passage of the bill.
Is there further discussion? Further discussion? If not, all those in favor will vote yea. Those opposed will vote nay. The clerk will prepare the machine. Has every member voted? Has every member voted? If so, the clerk will close the machine and ascertain the results. On this question, there being 33 yeas, 0 nays, 1 absent and not voting, more than the majority of those present and voting having voted in the affirmative, I declare the bill passed. Clerk will communicate the action of the Senate to the House.
Engrossed committee substitute for Senate Bill 529, establishing limitations on claims and benefits against state. Third reading of the bill.
Question before the Senate is, shall the bill pass? Is there discussion? The senator from Morgan County.
Thank you, Mr. President. The committee substitute for Senate Bill 529 came to us from the Legislative Compensation Commission, which was formerly referred to as the Court of Claims. The bill amends one existing section of the code, and it creates a new section of code. And so the amended section is West Virginia Code 14, Article 2, Section 13A, and that's a section that addresses compensation awards for people who are unjustly convicted and imprisoned. And so the change in the law affected by this bill would say that anyone who files a claim under this article has to file his claim within 2 years of the date of the final order vacating the claimant's conviction, a pardon was granted, or the dismissal of the accusatory instrument. And so it happens, you know, we all hate when it happens. It's what our criminal justice system tries very hard to guard against, but occasionally people do get convicted and incarcerated unjustly for crimes they didn't commit. So this creates a statute of limitations on when you can file a claim for that. We're deleting, the bill would delete language that required that another person had to be arrested or charged or convicted for the crime. So in this, the world in which we live now with DNA technology, you know, it is possible for somebody to be exonerated without necessarily knowing exactly who the perpetrator was. So that as an element of being able to assert a claim didn't seem to make sense. The bill also creates a new section, and it requires that all claims are closed within 10 years after the filing of the claim, but it doesn't apply to benefits receiving, to claimants or victims receiving benefits under Section 14G2 of the code. Be happy to try to answer questions, Mr. President. Otherwise, I urge the bill's passage.
Is there further discussion? Not, all those in favor will vote yea. Those opposed will vote nay. The clerk will prepare the machine. Has every member voted? Has every member voted? So the clerk will close the machine and ascertain the results. On this question being 33 yeas, 0 nays, 1 absent and not voting, more than the majority of those present and voting having voted in the affirmative, I declare the bill passed. Junior Senator from the 17th.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move the bill be made effective July 1, 2020, and request unanimous consent that the roll call used on passage of the bill be used to make it so effective.
Junior Senator from the 17th moves the bill be made effective on July 1, 2020, and request unanimous consent that the roll call used on passage of the bill be used to make it so effective. Is there objection? Chair hears none. On this question being 33 yeas, 0 nays, 1 absent and not voting, more than 2/3 of those elected having voted in the affirmative, I declare the bill effective July 1, 2020. Clerk will communicate the action of the Senate to the House.
Engrossed committee substitute for Senate Bill 532, distributing assets remaining in municipal policeman's or fireman's pension and relief fund on death of last retiree or beneficiary. Third reading of the bill.
Question before the Senate is, shall the bill pass? Is there discussion? The Senator from Wood County.
Thank you, Mr. President. SB 532 allows a municipality to reallocate leftover assets in a policeman or fireman pension fund upon the death of the last remaining retiree or beneficiary of that fund. In such a case, a municipality may only use those leftover assets to fund its future obligations under MP FERS. The bill also contains a 5-year look back for any state aid the municipality has received to fund its police or fireman pension funds. Any state aid that a municipality received from the Municipal Pensions Oversight Board within 5 years prior to the death of the retiree or beneficiary must be repaid to the Oversight Board out of the leftover assets in the fund. The Oversight Board would then reallocate those funds to municipalities with deficient police and fire pension funds. I'm glad to take questions, otherwise I urge passage.
Is there further discussion? Not, all those in favor will vote yea, those opposed will vote nay. The clerk will prepare the machine. Has every member voted? Has every member voted? So the clerk will close the machine and ascertain the results. On this question being 33 yeas, 0 nays, 1 absent and not voting, more than the majority of those present and voting having voted in the affirmative, I declare the bill passed. Clerk will communicate the action of the Senate to the House. Are there further bills on third reading?
No, sir.
Bills on second reading?
Committee substitute for Senate Bill 209 relating to annexation by minor boundary adjustment. Second reading of the bill.
Are there amendments to the bill?
No, sir.
Not, the bill will be engrossed and advanced to third reading.
Committee substitute for Senate Bill 241 requiring State Board of Education develop method for student transportation costs as standalone consideration. Second reading of the bill.
Are there amendments to the bill?
No, sir.
Not, the bill will be engrossed and advanced to third reading.
Engrossed committee substitute for House Bill 2696 creating an additional index system for state-owned lands. Second reading of the bill.
Are there amendments to the bill?
No, sir.
Bill be advanced.
Engrossed House Bill 4103 relating to Office of Drug Control Policy.
Are Junior Senator from the 17th?
Thank you, Mr. President. I request unanimous consent that the bill lie over one day while retaining its place on the calendar.
Is there objection? Chair hears none, so ordered.
Engrossed House Bill 4130 relating to competitive bidding for government construction contracts arising out of declared states of emergency. Second reading of the bill.
Are there amendments to the bill?
Yes, sir. The Committee on Government Organization moved to amend the bill on page 2, section 1A, line 25, after the word required by changing the period to colon and inserting the following proviso. Provided that in the event a payment or performance bond is not required, the entity responsible for the contract shall provide to the state agency responsible for overseeing the work of a document.
The senior senator from the 6th.
Mr. President, I request unanimous consent to explain the amendment in lieu of having it read.
Is there objection? Chair hears none. Senator may proceed.
Thank you, Mr. President. House Bill 4130 is an interim bill recommended by the Joint Committee on Flooding concerning contracting for construction projects. It allows a state agency awarding a residential contract to waive a requirement that a payment and performance bond be furnished. The amendment adds a proviso that in the event a bond is not required, the contractor must certify that all subcontractors, laborers, and vendors have been paid before final payment is released. I'll entertain questions. Otherwise, I urge adoption of the amendment.
Is there further discussion? Further discussion? If not, question before the Senate is adoption of the amendment as explained by the senior senator from the 6th. All those in favor will say aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes appear to have it. The ayes do have it. Declare the amendment adopted. Are there further amendments to the bill?
No, sir.
Not, the bill will be advanced. Bills on first reading. Junior senator from 17.
Thank you, Mr. President. I request unanimous consent that all bills on first reading be considered read a first time and advanced to second reading.
Is there objection? Chair hears none, so ordered. Introduction of guests. Remarks by members of the Senate. Miscellaneous business. The junior senator from the 17th.
Thank you, Mr. President. Pending announcements, I move the Senate stand adjourned until tomorrow at 11 a.m.
Are there announcements? Senator from Morgan County.
Thank you, Mr. President. Your committee on the judiciary will meet today at 3 o'clock p.m. in room 208 West Wing.
Senator from Jefferson County.
Thank you, Mr. President. Your Committee on Education will meet today at 2 o'clock in 451M.
Senior senator from the 6th.
Thank you, Mr. President. Your Committee on Government Organization will meet today at 2 p.m. in 208 West.
Junior senator from the 17th.
Thank you, Mr. President. Your Judiciary Subcommittee meeting regarding Senate Bill 136 will meet in the Senate Finance Room at 451M at 1 p.m. That would be myself, the senators from Harrison, and the senators from Wood.
Senator from Tucker.
Thank you, Mr. President. Your Committee on Energy will meet today at 1 o'clock in 208 West, and the agenda has been posted.
Senator from Raleigh County.
Thank you, Mr. President. Your Committee on Workforce will meet tomorrow morning at 10 a.m. in 208 West.
Junior Senator from the 4th.
Thank you, Mr. President. Your Senate Finance Committee will meet this afternoon in the Finance Committee room at 3 p.m. for the Department of Health and Human Resources budget presentation.
Further announcements. The Senator from Boone County.
Thank you, Mr. President. The Public Health Caucus will meet tomorrow morning at 9 a.m. in 208 West. We're going to have an in-depth discussion on these adverse childhood experiences, or ACE. Thanks.
Are there further announcements? Further announcements. Not the question for the Senate is, shall the Senate stand adjourned until tomorrow morning at 11 a.m.? All those in favor will say aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes appear to have it. The ayes do have it. Declare the Senate adjourned until tomorrow morning at 11 a.m.